there's a monster hiding in the remote forests, swamps, and rivers of the Congo Basin in Central Africa. It has a long neck, looks like a dinosaur, and is the size of an elephant, or maybe a hippo at least. That's what people who claim to have seen it say. It should have gone extinct millions of years ago, but this Congo's version of the Loch Ness monster somehow survived. This creature is the Mokele-mbembe, which means one who stops the flow of rivers, and more folks are saying they've seen it lately. European explorers first heard the stories of this creature from the people living near the Congo River in the early 1900s. A German captain even included a description of the monster in his official report from his expedition. The locals told him the animal was of a brownish-gray color with smooth skin, a very flexible neck, and only one long tooth that could be a horn. Some of them mentioned a long, muscular tail, like that of an alligator. They also said that the creature lived in the caves, but climbed the shores even in the daytime to find some plants to eat. Locals also believed its favorite snack was a kind of liana with large white blossoms. Some of them even showed the German captain some fresh path the monster left leading next to those plants. And they warned him that Mokele-mbembe definitely didn't like humans and took down any canoe that would sail nearby. Dinosaurs were a real hit in pop culture in the 1910s, and several newspapers in Europe and North America wrote about the dino-like monster from Africa back then. In the later years, several expeditions traveled to the Congo Basin to search for Mokele-mbembe or interview claimed witnesses. They did not find any direct physical evidence, but collected many stories. One zoologist in the 1980s said he took a film of Mokele-mbembe, but the footage did not develop properly. Stories and movies like Jurassic Park have kept the dream alive that dinosaurs might still be hiding somewhere in deep forests. At some point, people stopped reporting sightings of the creature as often, so it almost became a forgotten legend. But it all changed recently, as many people claim to have witnessed the mythical monster with their own eyes. Cryptozoologists, those fans of mysterious creatures, believe it could be a dinosaur that, for some reason, didn't go extinct, related to a brachiosaurus or a diplodocus. This idea comes from how people describe seeing the creature, with a super long neck, a huge body, and a tiny head. They think it might have stayed hidden in the deep forests of Africa all this time. But scientists say that if it really were the last living dinosaur, we would have found some real proof by now, like a photo or bones or something showing it walking around the Congo Basin. Some expeditions that are trying to find proof the monster is real have even used sonar technology to scan the murky waters of Central African rivers and lakes in search of any large, unidentified creatures. Some people even narrowed down the monster's location to a specific remote lake, surrounded by untouched jungle in the swamps. So far, the search for evidence hasn't been successful. The explanation behind all the sightings of the Mokele-mbembe could be the changing ecosystem. More and more human settlements are moving into the huge Congo Basin rainforest. People aren't used to seeing large animals that live in the forest, so they believe they have witnessed the mysterious creature from their folklore. The human brain often fills in the gaps in something we don't know and uses imagination to explain it, especially if there's a ready-made version that everyone's heard of. But still, we can't completely rule out the possibility that there are some new, unknown species of animals hiding in the Congo forests. Maybe just not a missing dinosaur. Another legend, this time Mongolian, says there's a giant worm living deep in the Gobi Desert. Yep, similar to the monster you've seen in Dune. The creature, which is supposedly up to 6 feet long, can spit acid that could melt anything and shoot electricity. They say it spends most of its days hiding underneath the sandy dunes, but likes to come out during the wetter months of June and July. The people in the West first found out about the megaworm of the Gobi Desert thanks to an American paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews. This brave man was probably the inspiration for Indiana Jones. In 1926, he wrote about the creature in his book. At the meeting with Mongolian leaders, Andrews heard detailed descriptions of the creature, even though none of them had ever seen it themselves. One of them said it looked like a sausage that was about 2 feet long, with no head or legs. According to him, the worm was so poisonous that just touching it could instantly take your life, and it lived in the loneliest parts of the Gobi Desert. Andrews didn't think the creature was real, but he shared these stories again in another book. And then, stories of the monster spread around the world. In some of them, it's only 1 foot long. In others, it's as large as a human. Some say it looks like a snake, and some describe it as a caterpillar. Some people claim it has wings and can fly, and others think it could be a supernatural evil being without a body. The color of the creature also remains a subject of debate. It could be white-gray, brown, or even bright red. The stories of witnesses are probably so different because the creature doesn't even exist. In 1983, one scientist who was visiting the region heard that an old man had managed to finally catch the mysterious worm. He also found out there was a nest nearby and decided to risk it all and see it. But instead of a scary monster, there was a tartar sand boa inside. Luckily for the scientist, this snake is non-venomous, but it does have gray-brown scales and could match the description of the giant worm. When he showed it to the locals, supposedly all of them said it was the monster they had seen. Big expeditions from America, Britain, and New Zealand came to the Gobi Desert to try and find the creature. Many other adventurers came from all around the world on their own, but found no evidence the monster was real. But many Mongolians are sure the death worm is no fantasy. If you don't believe there's a monster in the Gobi Desert, how about one in Lake Worth in Texas? According to local folklore, there's a part human, part goat creature with scales and long clawed fingers hiding there. It all started back in July 1969, when locals claimed to have spotted this mysterious creature roaming around. The newspapers loved the story and started reporting about new sightings. One article said that the monster jumped out of a tree and landed on some guy's car. Another report claimed that the Lake Worth monster decided to throw an automobile tire at a group of people. Someone even managed to take a photo of the creature, and the newspapers published it. Locals started flocking to the lake at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature, but no one could find any evidence it was real after all. The author of the monster's photograph later said it was most likely someone's prank, because the creature really wanted to be seen. Then, a reporter from the local newspaper received an anonymous letter saying that it was 3 high school students who decided to dress up and scare people. Even despite this, some cryptozoologists think it could have been an undiscovered primate species that walks on 2 legs. We don't know if the Worth monster is real, but it does one good thing and brings together the local community. Every year since 2009, they throw the Lake Worth Monster Bash.
This is Lolong, the largest crocodile ever found, stretching about 20 feet long. Now, imagine living in a world full of Lolongs, only with longer legs and the ability to run on land like a greyhound. It sounds like a nightmare monster, but she was real. Fossils of giant crocodile-like creatures were discovered back in the 1930s. And now, scientists have found that these beasts once roamed and dominated lands far bigger than they imagined. We're talking about the sebecids. They're a family of prehistoric crocodiles that once ruled South America, especially in what is now Argentina, Brazil, and Bolivia. And scientists discovered that these ancient predators were huge. Some species may have grown up to 20 feet long. Now, to give you an idea of how big that is, well, that would be you, and that would be her. Yeah, good luck outrunning that. Oh, by the way, they wouldn't be slithering in the water. They'd be walking right beside you. And that's actually the biggest difference between them and their crocodile relatives. Most sebecid species lived entirely on land. They were like lions, powerful, moving on all fours, but with tough crocodile-like skin. That image alone is already terrifying. But it gets worse when you figure these guys were fierce predators and we could have easily ended up as part of their dinner. Everything about them was perfectly built for the chase. They had narrow, dinosaur-like skulls and long legs that helped them sprint after their prey. They especially liked sloths and rodents, but honestly, with those sharp saw-like teeth, well, anything that crossed their path didn't stand much of a chance. And if one of their victims tried to fight back, well, that would have been a big mistake. Most of these crocodile ancestor species had tough, bony plates under their skin that worked like natural armor. They were seriously tough, but don't worry, you don't have to fear them. Luckily, for us at least, these beasts aren't roaming the earth anymore. According to Jonathan Block, a paleontologist at the Florida Museum of Natural History, these mysterious predators may have been the last of the Nodosuchians, a broad group of reptiles that first appeared back in the Jurassic period. Yep, these bad boys shared the planet with dinosaurs. That is, until the asteroid hit the Earth about 66 million years ago. Dinosaurs went kaput, and mammals took over. They became the land animals, but their path to the top wasn't exactly smooth. They still had to deal with the sebecids in South America. That's right, those tough crocodile-like predators actually survived the asteroid disaster. They also ruled and stayed at the top of the food chain until around 11 million years ago. Or at least that's what scientists thought, until they started finding strange fossilized teeth in the Caribbean. Uh-oh. Let's go back about 30 years when researchers uncovered two roughly 18-million-year-old teeth in Cuba. They had a tapered shape and tiny sharp serrations, perfectly designed for tearing into meat. There was no mistake. Scientists were looking at something that belonged to a top predator. But the question was, who? Had they found a fossil of an ancient giant croc? Well, maybe. Those teeth could have been from a species of sebecid, but that was strange, since scientists didn't think such large ancient predators ever lived in the Caribbean. And things got even stranger when another tooth turned up in Puerto Rico. This one even older, about 29 million years old. But there was a problem. Those teeth alone weren't enough to identify a specific animal. They needed more, so the mystery remained unsolved. Everything changed in 2023. Local work crews were building a road in the Dominican Republic when they suddenly stumbled upon ancient bones. Researchers soon realized they were looking at a fossilized tooth, but this time it came with two vertebrae. That was a big deal, because it's really hard to tell ancient crocodile species apart just from their teeth. But with those two vertebrae, things were different. Crocodile relatives with serrated teeth usually had ball and socket joints between their vertebrae. But in sebecids, that part of the spine was flat, so that made all the difference. It was enough to confirm that the fossil from the Dominican Republic belonged to a sebecid. And just like that, scientists discovered that this ancient predator really did live in the Caribbean. And even more surprising, they found out it was roaming around at least 5 million years before sebecids were thought to have disappeared everywhere else. Okay, but why is finding their fossils in the Caribbean such a big deal? Or better yet, why were scientists so sure before this discovery that they didn't live there? Well, that's because this prehistoric reptile didn't like the sea. Let me explain. The Caribbean is a region in the Americas made up of islands and the surrounding coastal areas. That meant for a land-loving ancient crocodile to travel from, say, Colombia to the Dominican Republic, it would have had to swim. And I mean really swim. We're talking over 350 miles of open ocean with strong currents and rough waves. You can see why that would have been a serious challenge for a land-based sebecid to cross, right? So, that's why scientists thought these prehistoric crocodiles could never have lived in the Caribbean. But now that researchers are finding their fossils there, they may have to find an explanation. And that is where this discovery becomes even more interesting, as it actually supports the Garlandia hypothesis. This idea first appeared in 1994. It suggests that millions of years ago, the movement of Earth's tectonic plates caused a stretch of land, now mostly underwater, to rise up in the Caribbean. This land, called the Aves Ridge, may have connected South America all the way to Puerto Rico, and then to other Caribbean islands like Hispaniola, Cuba, and Jamaica. So basically, it worked like a temporary chain of land bridges. a kind of natural highway that once allowed animals to go from South America to the Caribbean. Mammals, amphibians, and reptiles could actually walk right across instead of taking their chances at sea. The Garlandia hypothesis definitely sounds fascinating, but it's still up for debate. It hasn't been fully accepted by scientists yet, even though plenty of studies since the 90s seem to back it up. And this new discovery of a giant crocodile-like creature in the Dominican Republic could be one more important clue pointing in that direction. It's possible that many of the places where these sebecids once thrived started to disappear as the global climate cooled. Bit by bit, some of them were pushed into warmer tropical areas, until, eventually, the only places left for them to live were the Caribbean islands. This discovery lines up with something else that ecologists have observed around the world. Islands can act like museums of biodiversity, in the sense that they offer a safe place where plants and animals can keep surviving long after their relatives on the mainland have disappeared. In the case of sebecids, the difference is striking. The most recent fossils found in South America date back between 10 and 12 million years ago. But the tooth and vertebrae found in the Dominican Republic are much younger, only about 4.5 million years old. That means this island might have been the last place these giant reptiles called home. And if those serrated teeth found on other Caribbean islands also turned out to belong to sebecids, that would be huge. That would mean that these ancient crocodile-like creatures didn't just live in the Dominican Republic. They were spread across the Caribbean. And who knows, maybe we'll still find more of its fossils in places like Puerto Rico, Haiti, and Jamaica. Although the tropics are among the most biodiverse places on Earth, much of their natural history remains a mystery. Discovering a giant ancient crocodile in the Caribbean is a reminder that the world we live in today is just one chapter of Earth's long, ever-changing history. And who knows what other prehistoric crocodiles or ancient creatures are still waiting to be found beneath our feet.
You're walking along a hot desert under the scorching sun. You run out of supplies. There's no more water. You dream about rain, but there are no clouds in the sky. With each step, you lose more and more strength and fall. You notice a small pond nearby. Is it real water or just a mirage? You can't get to your feet, so you crawl there. The water is getting closer by the minute, but not because you're moving towards it. It's the water approaching you. In a few minutes, the pond area increases. Here, you're already in it. A small lake is formed, 60 feet deep, at the place where the piece of desert was. This real event happened in 2014 in the Tunisian desert. No one knows exactly on what day the lake appeared, since this part of the south of Tunisia is sparsely populated. At first, shepherds passing by saw the lake and didn't believe their eyes. In the next few hours, hundreds of locals came running to the place. They began to swim, jumping into the water from the surrounding rocks. But a few days later, something strange happened to the lake. In the beginning, it was a crystal clear turquoise blue color, but then it turned dark green. People didn't attach any importance to this and continued to swim. They shouldn't have done that. The scientists and geologists arrived and immediately announced that it wasn't safe to swim in the lake. Muddy green water means the lake is stagnating. It's not refreshed, it's not fed by underground springs. Now the lake is filled with algae and a lot of harmful bacteria that can cause serious diseases. They also found out that this region of Tunisia is filled with huge deposits of phosphate. This substance can disintegrate and leave radioactive traces. The lake can be carcinogenic, toxic, and hazardous for any living organism. But people didn't worry about this too much. They walk in the middle of the desert, while the sun heats the air to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of them are unlikely to refuse to jump into cool water, despite the warnings of scientists. Until now, no one knows exactly the reason for the appearance of the lake. Some scientists believe the lake was formed because of heavy rains. The lake is surrounded by rocks and is located inside a canyon. The water could just accumulate after each storm. Some geologists think an earthquake was the cause of the lake. a small seismic activity provoked the rupture of the Earth's rock above the water table, and through this hole, all the water splashed out. And if this theory is correct, then the lake can be pulled back underground through cracks. This is the same as when you pull the plug out of a drain hole in a filled bathtub. Any small earthquake is like pulling the plug out. Therefore, if you find yourself in these places, don't swim in this radioactive lake. We're going to the Caribbean Islands region. Among the clear blue sea, you can find a unique lake. It's located on one of the paradisical islands. You may not even notice the lake right away. The entire territory may seem like a huge concrete platform, but the main thing is not to step on its surface. Pitch Lake is a lake filled not with water, but with liquid asphalt. This is the largest asphalt deposit in the world. Steam is coming from all over the lake as it's hot. The depth of this lake is 250 feet. An entire passenger Boeing could fit there in an upright position. The lake is not fully studied, but scientists believe there's a deep fault in the Earth's crust under it. A huge amount of oil seeps through it. It passes through various chemical compounds and turns it into the asphalt. According to rough estimates, there are about 10 million tons of hot material inside this place. Theoretically, no life can exist in such conditions, but scientists have discovered a colony of microbes. Somehow, these creatures have learned to survive here. This also suggests that life outside of our planet may exist. The largest moon of Saturn, Titan, has many hydrocarbon lakes on the surface. And if the simplest forms of life appeared among a million tons of molten asphalt here on Earth, then nothing prevents them from appearing on Titan. We're going to Indonesia, to the island of Java. You need to climb a large volcano to see the next phenomenon. The volcano is overgrown with grass and trees, but it doesn't seem to be sleeping. Smoke is pouring out of its mouth. You climb to the top and see a clear lake instead of boiling magma. The blue sky is reflected in its bright turquoise surface. But don't try to jump there. This lake is filled with acid. The magma inside volcanoes comes from the deep bowels of the Earth's crust. The incandescent liquid consists of many molten metals and chemical compounds, and the lake is filled with particles of these metals. In addition, the volcano emits sulfur dioxide gases. When they combine with metals, they form a beautiful turquoise color. You'd better come back here at night. In some places, a lot of sulfur is concentrated. These accumulations come out of the lake and come into contact with the air. When this happens, everything around bursts into bright blue flame. It's safe to observe this from the side, but don't get too close. Nearby, on this island, there's another acid lake. It also releases sulfurous gases into the air, which are easily ignited when in contact with oxygen. And when this happens, the gases burst into a bright blue electric flame. It's difficult to see the flames during the day. At night, you can see these flashes from afar. Our next location is Australia. You start the drone high above the forest area. Among the green dense forests, you can see a bright pink spot. It's our lake. This time, the beautiful pink color may not stop you from swimming. You can relax here and take beautiful photos. The lake attracts thousands of tourists, but scientists have only recently been able to find out the reason for the unusual color. At the bottom of this salty lake in Melbourne, special algae grow and secrete a red pigment. In combination with sunlight, high temperatures, and a small amount of precipitation, it turns the lake pink. By the way, Australia is not the only place with such a phenomenon. There are lakes with a pink tinge of water all over the world. You can find them in Senegal, Bolivia, Kenya, and many other countries. The water of these places is also salty and contains the red pigment of unusual algae. We leave the hot beaches and fly to cold Canada. Here, we see a frozen Lake Abraham. We step on the ice and notice huge frozen bubbles inside. They resemble jellyfish, and there are thousands of them there. This is methane. It's a highly flammable substance. The grass, leaves, pieces of trees, and any organic substances that fall into the lake become food for a lot of bacteria that emit methane. Upon contact with frozen water, methane turns into tens of thousands of frozen balls. When the ice melts, the bubbles burst and sizzle. This phenomenon can also be observed on some shores of the Arctic Ocean. There, The size of the bubbles can reach several times more than balloons. It's a beautiful sight, but it's not safe since methane ignites when it contacts with air. We're in the coldest place of our journey. It's Antarctica, near the driest desert on Earth. A dry place doesn't mean it has to be hot. It's an area with minimum precipitation. The desert isn't sand and cacti, but a place where almost no living life inhabits. Some areas of Antarctica meet these two criteria. However, in this icy desert, you can notice a tiny lake. Its depth is only a few inches. Technically, it's a pond, but the most amazing thing is that it stays in a liquid form. The temperature here drops to negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit. The pond should be frozen, but this doesn't happen. Don Juan Pond is one of the saltiest reservoirs on the planet. The amount of salt here doesn't allow the water to freeze. Scientists have been studying this lake for more than 60 years, but they still can't find out the exact reason for the appearance of water here.
Now, if Earth's history were a movie, we humans would only take up the last second of the end credits. Our planet has been around for about 4.6 billion years, but our human story began about 300,000 years ago in Africa. Now, our ancestors had some wild adventures in nature. They could have run into creatures so big they'd make today's elephants look like puppies. The woolly mammoth is a pretty famous animal, sure. His cousin, though, the Columbian mammoth, not so much. This giant used to roam places from Canada all the way down to Mexico. Unlike the furrier woolly mammoths, which hung out in colder places, these animals had shorter hair, resembling huge elephants. They also had incredibly large tusks, like 12 feet worth of spiraling, sturdy tusks. And they weren't just for show, they came in handy when facing predators. That includes our ancestors. If you think about sloths these days, you're picturing these adorably slow creatures. They couldn't possibly be in your list of most dangerous animals. Well, their grandparents might have. For starters, we call them ground sloths, and they vary a lot in size. Some were as big as rhinos, and others, like the Megatherium, were as colossal as elephants. Imagine seeing a 20-foot-long sloth which doesn't mind chewing on some meat every now and then, at least in theory. Ever heard of Bigfoot? Well, our next animal kind of looks like him, but is a distant cousin to orangutans. Meet Gigantopithecus, the largest primate to ever call our planet its home. Standing tall at 10 feet and weighing more than 600 pounds, these animals were amazing to look at in real life. Unlike Bigfoot, they weren't constantly hiding. In fact, it's believed they were peaceful and gentle creatures. Sadly, they faded away about 100,000 years ago, mainly because their food sources slowly became unavailable. Those lush, fruity forests they called home eventually turned into dry grasslands. Next on our list is the cave hyena. Weighing a chunky 250 pounds and standing 3 feet tall, these beasts were as long as a grown-up lying down. What's even more interesting about these creatures is that they loved hanging out in groups. A pack could be as big as 30 of these animals, which meant they could easily take on even the biggest, heaviest mastodons. Our ancient families would have needed to stay alert around these hungry specimens. Sadly for these hyenas, about 20,000 years ago, their numbers started going down. Soon enough, they completely disappeared from the planet. Quick pop quiz. What's called a tiger but isn't really one? It's the saber-tooth tiger. I mean, sure, they belong to the feline family, but they aren't technically tigers. First appearing around 42 million years ago, in July, I think. Many of their kind were gone before we even showed up. However, early Americans might have bumped into a couple of specimens from this group. If that really happened, it would have been quite the encounter. Think of the biggest wild lion today or the hefty Siberian tiger. These big cats also had some incredible features hidden in their fur. They were good at sneaking around, hiding, and pouncing on mammoths bigger than themselves. Their bite wasn't that strong, but they could open their jaws wide, like twice as much as a lion. And although their teeth were a bit on the weak side, they had buff forearms to pin down their dinner, giving those big fangs a purpose. Not the kind of kitty you'd want to play with. Dire wolves made their debut about 250,000 years ago. They were like the gray wolves we know today, but a lot stronger. While wolves these days stretch out to about 6 feet and tip the scales at 170 pounds max, dire wolves were about 5 feet and about 150 pounds. Found all over North and South America, they had admirable jaws, biting nearly a third harder than their modern counterparts. Also, their favorite snack was horses. But just like many other majestic beasts of the past, they faded away around 10,000 years ago. Now, names can be deceiving. Take the American lion, for example. It's not really a lion, it's more of a panther's big cousin. The other part of the name is correct, though. They did live in America about 330,000 years ago. This feline was no lap cat either. They were at the top of the wildcat pyramid, weighing a colossal 772 pounds. That's like stacking 4 grown men on a scale. Even the mighty African lion would look a tad bit shy beside these beasts. With the muscle to take down a bison, you wouldn't want to accidentally interrupt their dinner. They parted ways with this planet around 11,000 years ago, right after the last ice age. Now, down in Australia, about 50,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, there lurked a relative of the Komodo dragon, the Megalania. Experts love to have debates on how big it was. Some say it stretched out to 23 feet. Others think it was just about 11 feet long. Either way, they were basically mega-sized Komodo dragons with a dangerous bite. If you think bears are already big and fluffy now, let's introduce the short-faced bear. While this big creature stood on its hind legs, it towered at 14 feet. With long limbs, they could outrun today's bears, hitting speeds up to 40 miles per hour. These ultra bears sadly disappeared around 11,600 years ago. Now imagine a crocodile. Okay, imagine that same crocodile, only supersized, with sporty legs, doing its thing in Australia about 1.6 million years ago. Well, say hello to the quincana. These crocs were extremely large, reaching 23 feet. And no, they weren't lazy river loungers. These creatures really loved spending time on land. They evolved to have strong legs for their chases and razor-sharp teeth designed for slicing, not gripping. When did we stop sharing beaches with them? About 40,000 years ago. The name elephant bird might not sound familiar, but try to picture a bird that stood tall as high as a basketball hoop at 10 feet and weighed as much as a small car, 1,500 pounds. Their eggs were equally huge, like 150 chicken eggs bundled up into one. Now, as amazing as these birds sound, there's a lot we still don't know about them. They're hard to study, as most extinct animals are. Still, some recent studies have given us some clues. Scientists have been examining ancient molecules from their fossilized eggshells. It's an awesome piece of evidence, since these birdie shells were thick, preserving precious DNA inside. Plus, there are tons of these eggshell fragments sprinkled all over Madagascar's beaches. Because of these findings, we now know these birds were herbivores and loved eating leaves and seeds. We also know the tiny kiwi bird is its closest living relative. Now, dodos were these amazing birds we also used to share the planet with. They're like distant cousins to ancient pigeons. To give you some perspective, imagine a chunky bird weighing about 50 pounds. Similar to chickens, turkeys, and ostriches, dodos were also the types of birds that couldn't fly. Their wings were small, and they had the muscle strength of, well, a wet noodle. Now, you might have heard the word dodo used as a name for creatures that aren't that bright. Don't get confused, though, by this name. These birds were, in fact, intelligent. Scientists were able to figure that out by studying their fossils. It turns out that they were good at smelling stuff, unlike most birds that are all about the visuals. These creatures aren't around for us to study anymore, but that might change. One evolutionary biologist is on a mission to fully understand these amazing ancient birds. On that note, she revealed that the dodo's DNA has been completely sequenced. There are even talks about potentially bringing dodos back to life. They would make a nice addition to the lovely beaches of Mauritius, the place they used to call home many years ago. Researchers have been waiting for this find for a long time. They came in all shapes and sizes. It would have been hard to distinguish them from dinosaurs. Most species weren't bigger than a mouse. It's like a reminder of a long-gone era when its ancestors walked on all fours. The first mammals to walk the earth were different from us humans in one important aspect. We walk on two legs. That makes us bipedal. But the first animals that made the transition from sea to land were tetrapods. This means they walked on four legs. The story of these creatures began in present-day Scotland. The region is home to the first terrestrial ecosystem in the world. The rock here is made from silica. This material is the building block of glass. Hot volcanic springs formed these rocks more than 400 million years ago. Such land composition is a treasure trove for paleontologists. These are the scientists who study the fossil remains of animals and plants. In Scotland, they found everything from plants with preserved cells to the oldest known fossils of insects. They even discovered a fungus that grew up to 29 feet tall. But there was one find that stood out from all the other ones. In 2015, scientists unearthed fossils of four-legged animals. The place of discovery was Willie's Hole, near the hillside village of Churnside in the south of the country. Researchers dated the finds to the Paleozoic era, about 360 million years ago. This was the time when the early ancestors of the dinosaurs thrived. The world was a much different place back then. Today, we associate Scotland with cold and rain, and kilts and golf. But at that time, this land sat closer to the equator. It had lush vegetation, and its climate was hot and humid. Droughts and flooding were quite common. It was the perfect setting for an important evolutionary event. Researchers have been waiting for this find for a long time. The fossil records had a 15 million year gap. Its name was Romer's Gap, after the Harvard professor who described it. Science was missing fossil evidence of the animals that ventured onto land on all fours. The 5 fossil species they found in Scotland shed light on this mystery. The first tetrapods were divided into 2 large groups. One of them contained the ancestors of birds, reptiles, and mammals. Their collective name is Amniotus. The other included the ancestors of amphibians, such as frogs. When these and similar species migrated to dry land, they discovered that they weren't alone. The earliest life forms that made this evolutionary leap were liverwort-like plants. We know this because scientists found their spores. They also discovered fossilized remains of an air-breathing millipede. It had tiny holes that allowed it to breathe air. This puts it among the first oxygen-breathing animals on the planet. And this species of millipedes is the first land dweller in the animal kingdom. Today, the largest of such creatures is the African elephant. Scientists believe that one of the first four-legged creatures to make it onto land was an amphibian ancestor. Its name was Ichthyostega. The first part of the animal's name translates from ancient Greek as fish. This reveals a lot about the way the creature moved. It dragged itself on the ground using only its front limbs that resembled fins. This is the way that mudskipper fish move on land today. This isn't how we imagine proper walking, but during the period our hero lived on Earth, it was the perfect way to get around. The climate had both extremely dry and wet periods. The ability to walk and swim at the same time was especially useful. The fossils from Scotland supported this claim. The fish-like animals scientists found had 4 slender limbs. This is the perfect equipment for life on land, not inside the ocean. There was further evidence. The fossils displayed well-developed lungs for breathing outside of water, but their legs were still too weak to completely lift the body off the ground. The tail section had to slither along the surface, similar to how a snake moves forward. This animal that resembled a modern-day salamander lived during the Paleozoic era. This was the time when four-legged creatures developed a standard number of digits at the end of their hands and feet, 5 on each. We know them today as fingers. All species that had more than 5 fingers started slowly disappearing. These pteropods split into 2 groups. The first of them had to return to the sea to lay eggs. This group would later give rise to amphibians. The second kind of tetrapods is more interesting to human evolution. They're considered the ancestors of reptiles, dinosaurs, and mammals. The Permian period came at the end of the Paleozoic. By this time, all life forms on Earth inhabited the supercontinent of Pangaea. There were vast deserts far away from the oceans. The more important species that walked on all fours during this time were the synapsids. They came in all shapes and sizes, but the only subgroup of synapsids to survive into the Cenozoic were the mammals. Doesn't seem like much, but we exist today thanks to these ancient tetrapods. As a species, we have come far in the tree of life. A recent study revealed that the first life form to evolve was an ocean-drifting comb jelly. This came as a bit of a surprise. For a long time, researchers believed that the simple sponge was the oldest animal on the planet. After analyzing vast amounts of data, comb jelly came on top, or the bottom, depending on how you look at the tree of life. These ancient beings were squishy and had tentacles, but they weren't the true jellyfish like the ones we see today. The creatures lacked the bell-shaped body and stinging cells. Scientists cannot precisely date the species because they lack a fossil of the oldest comb jelly. This is not the case with other ancient creatures that once roamed our planet. The ancestor of dinosaurs, turtles, and crocodiles are familiar to science. These are the animals that appeared during the Paleozoic era. This was a time when true tetrapods appeared. Paleontologists recognized them by two distinctive openings on each side of their skull. The first mammals that appeared during this era resembled reptiles. It would have been hard to distinguish them from dinosaurs. Some of them later evolved features we all know today. These include fur and a warm-blooded metabolism. They developed during the time when dinosaurs dominated Earth. That's why these first true mammals were small. Most species weren't bigger than a mouse. Their diet consisted of plants, as they were herbivores. Also, they were creatures of the night. During the day, they were mostly hiding underground. Now, this wasn't such a bad strategy. Some 66 million years ago, an asteroid fell on the Yucatan Peninsula in today's Mexico, and this spelled the end for dinosaurs. 75% of all species that lived on Earth at the time disappeared. The mammals' small size helped them survive and repopulate the planet. The era in the history of our planet that followed the Mesozoic was nicknamed the Age of the Mammals. The climate became warmer, so grasslands expanded. These were the ideal conditions for tetrapods to grow in size. Some mammals decided not to take this evolutionary path. Bats remained relatively small in size and took to the skies to join birds. And there are some tetrapods that return to the ocean. The most notable example are whales. Today, their closest living relatives are hippos. Both species are aquatic, but they developed this trait separately. The first whales were actually tetrapods. These were the most typical examples of four-legged land animals. If you saw them today, you would think they were oversized rats. That's what whales looked like some 50 million years ago. Paleontologists came to this conclusion in the 1980s by studying the skull of a now extinct animal. It lived around the edge of a large, shallow ocean. At some point in history, it returned to the marine way of life. Its back legs devolve. But sometimes, biologists stumble upon a living specimen of a whale that still displays tiny hind limbs in its skeleton. It's like a reminder of a long-gone era when its ancestors walked on all fours.
It's a perfect summer day. You're relaxing on the beach, dipping your toes into the cool water, when suddenly, bam! A 56-foot aquatic nightmare rockets from the waves. It's the size of 2 London double-decker buses, sporting about 60 razor-sharp teeth, including bonus chompers on the roof of its mouth, because why not? This aquatic beast isn't picky about its diet either. Sharks? Turtles? Other sea monsters? Yep, they're all on the menu. Meet the mosasaur, a group of marine reptiles that ruled the oceans millions of years ago. If you've seen Jurassic World, you'll recognize them as the stars of that epic moment when a massive creature leaps out of the water to snatch a great white shark like it's sushi. That's a mosasaurus, and it's every bit as terrifying as it sounds. Recently, scientists stumbled upon a fossil of one of those marine monsters in, of all places, Mississippi. Yes, Mississippi, the land of magnolias and catfish. Turns out it's also home to ancient sea dragons. This discovery was a happy accident. A team of geologists was mapping the terrain in east-central Mississippi when they noticed something strange poking out of the ground. It wasn't a rock or seashell. It was a vertebra. And a massive one. In fact, it was so large it barely fit in the hand of the scientist who found it. The fossil likely belonged to the largest known species of mosasaur, the Mosasaurus hoffmanni. Now, the biggest mosasaur ever found clocked in at a staggering 56 feet long. This new specimen hit a solid 30 feet at least, and while it might not break the world record, it certainly makes the crown for the biggest mosasaur ever discovered in Mississippi. Fun fact, that's still longer than the average RV, and with way worse gas mileage. To be fair, the Mississippi Museum of Natural Science already had a couple of mosasaur fossils in its collection. But this newcomer might just steal the spotlight. And this isn't an isolated incident. In 2015, paleontologists unearthed the skull of a 24-foot-long mosasaur in North Dakota. Years later, a private fossil hunter, yes, that's a thing, found an equally huge mosasaur in Texas. Well, its jaw at least. These sea monsters, also known as sea dragons, by the way, actually have one of the wildest origin stories in paleontology. The very first skull was found way back in 1764 in a chalk quarry in the Netherlands. And at the time, scientists thought it was a whale. Then came a second skull, which was so impressive that French revolutionaries literally looted it during the siege in 1794. Legend has it they swapped it for 600 bottles of wine. Doesn't sound like a fair trade to me. That fossil actually helped pioneer the concept of extinction and got paleontologists buzzing for centuries. Since then, mosasaur fossils have popped up all over the world, like ancient scaly celebrities leaving their mark. From the Mississippi backwoods to the deserts of Morocco, from New Jersey to Belgium, scientists have uncovered everything from teeth to full skulls, sometimes even misplacing them in museum drawers for centuries. So what exactly were these terrifying titans of the deep? Well, let's just say, if ancient oceans had a most likely to eat everything in sight award, the mosasaur would win it. Picture a gigantic scaly torpedo with a mouth full of about 60 razor-sharp teeth, including some growing on the roof of its mouth like dental overkill. It had a long, muscular tail for propulsion and 4 paddle-like limbs that worked like turbocharged oars, letting it cruise through warm, shallow seas like a reptilian speedboat. Scientists believe they were close relatives of modern monitor lizards and snakes, which honestly just makes both of those animals way more terrifying. Some mosasaurs even might have had adaptations for sensing vibrations in the water, allowing them to detect movement from a distance, similar to how sharks use electroreception today. Their eyes were well developed too, giving them sharp vision in the dim ocean depths, a key advantage when hunting fast or elusive prey. But what really makes mosasaurs the stuff of prehistoric nightmares is their attitude. They were apex predators, and they knew it. Those sea monsters weren't picky eaters. Fish, turtles, birds, sharks, other mosasaurs. Basically anything that moved was dinner. Fossilized mosasaur stomach contents prove they practiced family dinner in the most metal way possible. If they were around today, your beach day would be a lot more exciting, and probably shorter. These guys were so intense, they dominated the whole world. It's safe to say, mosasaurs were the undisputed rulers of the late Cretaceous oceans. And like today's orcas or great white sharks, they probably used ambush tactics, sneaking up on prey from below before striking with explosive force. Bite marks found on the fossilized bones of turtles and even other mosasaurs suggest intense underwater battles worthy of a blockbuster movie. But how did one end up in Mississippi of all places? Well, rewind the clock about 80 million years and you'll find part of North America underwater. A vast, shallow sea known as the Western Interior Seaway split the continent in two, running from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic Ocean. It was warm, teeming with life, and yes, crawling with sea monsters. This prehistoric seaway was a watery wonderland. Imagine long-necked plesiosaurs gliding through the water, birds with teeth diving for fish, and oysters the size of car tires clinging to reef-like structures. Even giant fish like this weird guy over here called it home. This ancient inland sea stretched over 600 miles wide in some places, but it was no more than a few hundred feet deep, making it ideal territory for predators like mesosaurs to thrive. The shallow depth also meant that their prey had few places to hide, turning the seaway into a prehistoric buffet. But the Western Interior Seaway wasn't a permanent fixture. As the Rocky Mountains rose, the seaway slowly disappeared. Over millions of years, it transformed from a shallow ocean to swamps and then to dry land. Today, what was once an ocean is now the Midwest, complete with cornfields, cows, and the occasional mosasaur vertebra hiding in the dirt. Now, this wasn't exactly the end of the mosasaurs. Sadly, even these monsters couldn't outswim extinction. Those massive sea beasts met their watery grave around 66 million years ago, when Earth got an unwelcome visitor, a 10-mile-wide asteroid. When that space rock slammed into what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, it unleashed destruction on a planetary scale. The impact triggered massive tsunamis, set forests ablaze, and shot so much debris into the atmosphere that sunlight was blocked out for months, maybe even years. This impact winter plunged Earth into a deep freeze. With sunlight gone, plants couldn't photosynthesize, and the food chain collapsed like a house of cards. On land, plant eaters starved, and predators like T-Rex soon followed. About 75% of all species on Earth disappeared. But don't think the oceans were a safe retreat. The seas were hit just as hard, if not worse. First came the mega tsunami that devastated marine life along coastlines. Then, the real villain arrived. You see, without sunlight, phytoplankton, those tiny microscopic plants that serve as the foundation of the marine food web, perished. With them went zooplankton, small fish and filter feeders. And when the buffet dried up, the big predators like the mosasaurs went hungry. No food, no future. With plunging temperatures and ocean acidification, even the ocean's top predators couldn't survive. Mosasaurs, along with plesiosaurs and ammonites, were wiped out in the blink of a geological eye. So ended the reign of sea monsters. The good news is that you can now swim at peace knowing that no sea dragon will ever come at you. I mean, it's a bummer that they went extinct, but let's be honest, beach days are way more relaxing without 56-foot lizards crashing the party.
There's a lake in the heart of Asia that holds 1/5 of all the world's liquid freshwater. It's more than all the 5 Great Lakes have together. Even if all the rivers on our planet suddenly changed their direction and set on a mission to drain this lake, it would take them a whole year to finish the job. I'm talking about the deepest lake in the world, Lake Baikal. If you decide to go all the way down to its deepest point, prepare for a journey of almost 5,400 feet. The descent takes several hours, but the rift floor of the lake is way deeper, between 5 to 7 miles beneath the surface. It means it could be even further down than the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest known place on Earth. The amount of water it has would be enough for everyone on Earth to have something to drink for up to 50 years. This mighty giant of a lake replenishes its water completely every 383 years. Baikal has a great delivery crew of over 300 rivers and streams, bringing their waters right in. And only one river flows out of Baikal, the Angara, which is headed straight for the Arctic Ocean. Baikal isn't only the deepest, but also the oldest existing freshwater lake in the world. It formed at least 25 million years ago. It all began when the Earth's crust decided to play Tetris and created the lake and the surrounding mountains. At some point, Baikal must have been just a humble riverbed, but then tremors and fractures shook the Earth, and the distance between the shores got bigger. Water levels rose thanks to the melting glaciers. Then, several lakes formed and later merged into one. Baikal is one of around 20 lakes in the world that are older than 1 million years. And since it wasn't disturbed by glacial periods, it's a perfect research ground for scientists. Its deep-drilled core sediments can tell a lot about the climate of our planet in different periods. Since Baikal is in a rift basin with 2,000 seismic tremors per year, the lake is deepening and still growing in size. Its shores drift apart at around the same rate as South America and Africa are moving away from each other, so it has all the potential to become an ocean. Another thing Baikal has in common with the oceans is that it has water rich in oxygen, even at its lowest depths. This is one of the reasons why the fauna of the lake is so incredibly rich. It's home to over 2,500 various animals and 1,000 plant varieties. Around half of them are unique and only exist in this area, like the endemic algae, the Baikal omul fish, and the Baikal oilfish. There are also some bears, elk, and lynx living on its shores. They must appreciate the fact that the temperatures around the lake are always higher than the rest of Siberia, thanks to its huge water mass. Most Baikal dwellers prefer to stick to the bottom of the lake, but there's one brave guy you'll meet if you decide to visit. Meet the Baikal seal, also known as Nerpa. It's the only true freshwater seal in the world. Nerpa's eyes are so cute it nearly landed the part of Puss in Boots in Shrek. Nerpa in Boots sounds good to me. These huge eyes are there to help them follow their favorite pelagic fish underwater. There are other seal kinds that can handle freshwater or use it to breathe, but these cuties spend their entire lives in it. But wait, how did seals, which are supposed to be oceanic creatures, end up in a lake miles and miles away from the sea? About 400,000 years ago, during the Pleistocene era, these adventurous creatures traveled up the river and drainage systems that connected Lake Baikal to the Arctic Ocean. The ringed seal that still lives in the Arctic is believed to be the Baikal seal's closest ancestor. Today, Baikal seals are confined to their freshwater home because of the changes in waterways. And they seem to be pretty happy with their home as they can choose from a huge variety of food to eat. The seals mostly hang out in the north and central areas of the lake, but move south in the winter. The lake gets covered with ice, which they use as a chill-out zone, just like their oceanic cousins use rocks or the beach. Since at least 1969, Lake Baikal has had some mysterious ice rings pop up randomly here and there. At some point, they got so big that the astronauts even spotted them from space. The rings usually appear in late April, but can be there in January or May. Scientists couldn't crack the code on how these rings form for a while. They had all sorts of theories, and the most popular involved methane gas bubbles from the lake's depths. But then, scientists noticed that some of the rings were in shallower waters, where gas emissions don't happen. So, an international team of scientists decided to solve the mystery. They traveled to Lake Baikal, drilled holes in the ice, and dropped sensors into the water. In 2016, when they started the research, they heard that 2 vans had gotten stuck in the mysterious ice rings. Once they had analyzed the data from the sensors, it turned out that the secret behind the rings was warm eddies flowing clockwise under its ice cover. The currents were less intense in the center of the eddies, so the ice above them was thicker at the edges. The waters of the lake are so clear that you can see some extremely deep parts up to over 130 feet down. This is thanks to the surrounding mountains that send off melting ice right in. Plankton that live in the lake also helps clean the floating debris. When this crystal clear water freezes, it forms an unusually thick and see-through layer of ice. The wind likes to play sculptor on Baikal and creates one-of-a-kind pieces of art here. It picks up water, which, of course, freezes into the most unusual designs. Frozen bubbles and icicles you've never seen before. The location and geography of the lakes and the cycles of melting and refreezing create the perfect conditions for this ice workshop. And you can even see rocks that seem to be floating. The bottom of the rock freezes to the surface of the ice. Then, the strong winds wear away the surroundings, leaving a perfect pedestal for the rock. If you think the floating rocks look eerie, how about Baikal's version of the Loch Ness monster? The local Buryat people have a legend about the water dragon master that lives in the lake. A dragon is believed to be the most powerful creature living on Earth in Asian mythology. They believe there are 4 dragons living in the 4 seas, each responsible for one of the cardinal directions. Baikal is the North Sea in this story. The image of this dragon is supposedly etched in ancient petroglyphs on the cliffs of Baikal. There's also a hefty stone slab that looks like a monument dated back to somewhere between the 3rd and the 9th century BCE, depicting a mysterious water monster. Imagine the stories this stone could tell, echoing the whispers of a bygone era and leaving us to unravel the enigma of the Baikal cliffs. The legend says that a local warrior was chasing the dragon. He finally reached the largest Baikal island of Alkan. He was ready to face and defeat the dragon, but the beast turned into a beautiful girl, and they got married. That's one unusual twist to a classic defeat the dragon and take the girl story. So, local legends describe that dragon as a giant sturgeon with an almost gator-like snout and armored body. In reality, the mythical monster must be one of the many huge fish living in the lake. They can afford to grow to several feet in length thanks to the high levels of oxygen in the water. Beluga sturgeon can weigh several thousands of pounds, lives up to 50 or 60 years, and never stops growing. The Loch Ness monster is actually not from Scotland. Turns out, this real-life creature lived in the freezing waters of Antarctica about 70 million years ago. In 2019, researchers discovered fossils of a huge, prehistoric marine reptile that looked a lot like what people described as Nessie. This beast was terrifying, measuring up to 36 feet long with a massive giraffe-like neck. It also weighed around 15 tons, which is about the size of 3 elephants. Next up on our list of huge animals is a penguin. I know penguins aren't exactly what you'd call big, but scientists have just found what they think might be the biggest penguin ever, the Kumimamu fordyce. It's believed that these giant birds were hanging around New Zealand about 55 million years ago, and they were huge, weighing over 330 pounds. That's about 5 times the size of the emperor penguins, which are considered the largest penguins alive today. Now, let's move on from massive creatures to something much smaller. Meet B. manfredschmidti, a great ape that lived around 12 million years ago in what is now Germany. This creature is very special, as it's the tiniest great ape ever discovered. And when I say tiny, I really mean it. These ancient animals only weighed about 22 pounds. They were basically no bigger than a super chunky cat. If you think small creatures aren't scary, wait until you meet the electric blue tarantula. This newly discovered species from Thailand's mangroves has an almost otherworldly electric blue color. Its vibrant hue doesn't come from pigment, it is actually caused by the unique structure of its hair, which reflects blue light, making it look like an extraterrestrial being. We're going even further now, diving into the freezing pitch-black depths. At around 2,000 feet deep in the Andaman Sea, scientists found a new species of ghost shark, which they named Chimera supape. Their appearance is straight out of a horror movie. They have sleek, pale bodies, frills that look like feathers, and large, creepy eyes. These ghost sharks aren't actually sharks, but they are related, having diverged from their cousins about 400 million years ago. The good news is they're not too scary since they're only a bit bigger than a shoebox. Just when you think we can't find stranger creatures, we come across this ancient amphibian from Brazil, scientifically known as K. rosae. This newly discovered giant crocodile-like creature lived during the Triassic period, over 240 million years ago. At nearly 10 feet long, it had a powerful jaw, resembling the modern-day alligator. This beast was definitely a survivor, since it adapted to the most severe conditions ever seen on the planet. Last year, scientists were tracking the dense Amazon rainforest at night when they found some quirky orange spiders that looked like they were wearing black boots. The team soon discovered it was a new type of giant crab spider. And no, they don't look like crabs at all. They only got their name because, while perched on plants, these spiders spread their legs out to the sides, just like crabs. Do you know that some new species are named after celebrities? Hollywood icon Harrison Ford now has his very own snake, for example. Discovered in Peru, T. Harrison Fordy honors the actor famous for his role as Indiana Jones, an archaeologist with a notorious fear of snakes. Unlike the film's menacing serpents, this new snake species is quite modest in size, measuring about 16 inches long. We also have the Rampholion princei, a small new species of pygmy chameleon from Tanzania that was named after US rapper and poet Prince Iya. He received this honor because of his work raising awareness about global environmental issues. Another celebrity namesake is DiCaprio's snail-eating snake, which hangs out in the shrubs of Panama's forests. This S. Irmelindi caprioi is about 15 inches long and spends its nights on palm fronds looking for snails and slugs. Its round eyes look like glowing coals that can be a bit scary, but overall, the creature is super chill. Even when it feels threatened, it doesn't bite. It just coils up around its head and gives off a really bad smell. Now something a bit more sinister. Meet Venomius tomhardii. Does that name ring a bell? Exactly. This new species of spider was named after Tom Hardy's portrayal of the infamous Marvel character Venom. And all because the black spots on the spider's abdomen reminded researchers of the famous anti-hero. Most spiders of this species were found in Australia at night, sitting in their elaborate webs in forested areas near the coast. When disturbed, these creepy crawlers often hide in silk-lined hollows in tree branches. We've also got something for the Lord of the Rings fans. In the vast and warm waters of the Amazon River, scientists have just discovered a new species of pacu. This fish is a relative of the terrifying piranha, with a plant-based diet and human-like teeth. It was named Myloplus sauron because of a bold vertical black mark on its side, which reminded researchers of the fiery eye symbol of the villain Sauron from Tolkien's epic saga. Wait, is that a tanned capybara or a wild dog? Well, actually, it's neither. This is a newly discovered dwarf deer. This tiny creature, about the size of a basset hound, scurries through the forests of Peru. The combo of large eyes, stocky body, and short legs makes this animal simply adorable. This cute little deer is the complete opposite of what we've got coming up next. This bizarre-looking creature is what we believe the beast of 5 teeth might have looked like. Its fossils, found in Chilean Patagonia, showed that it lived during the age of dinosaurs, about 72 million years ago. This finding is just another piece of evidence that mammals had been roaming around that part of South America much earlier than we thought. Moving from the forests of South America to the deserts of Australia, we come across a sand dragon lizard, known scientifically as Ctenophorus tayacalpa. With its sandy color and long, lean body, this lizard looks like it could star in a Dune movie. Discovered last year, this sand dragon lizard blends in perfectly with the hot sands of the Great Victoria Desert in southern Australia. For over 10 years, a large-eyed creature managed to hide from scientists who ventured into the mountains of southwestern China. But not this time. In 2023, the group finally managed to take photos of 7 frogs that didn't match any known species. They're now known as Leishan odorous frogs, a species that grows to be about 2 inches long and has small bumps all over their grass-green bodies. Off the coast of Chile, we have recently found a seamount nearly 4 times as high as the Burj Khalifa. Underwater mountains are usually home to beautiful life forms, like sponge gardens and ancient corals. But this Chilean seamount also hid a creature known as the flying spaghetti monster. It's a rare type of squid with long noodle-like tentacles that make it look like an underwater pasta dish. Including its tentacles, this strange creature can be over 130 feet long. Recently, scientists were diving into the cold waters of the Antarctic Peninsula when they thought they had found an ordinary dragonfish swimming by. But there was something unusual about this one. It turned out that this fish had two darker vertical stripes along its slender body. That's when they realized they were looking at a new species, the banded dragonfish. From bizarre sea creatures to a cute one. In 2017, locals were diving near Kume Island in Japan when they found the skeleton panda sea squirt. This deep-sea oddity quickly won people over with its look because its black spots actually resemble a panda bear's eyes and ears. At least if you have a good imagination. This unusual creature filters water to catch its food, and is yet another reminder of the ocean's hidden wonders.
Psst, run! Really, it's not safe out there. There's a saber-toothed tiger lurking around. You better be careful. What are you doing? Don't peek. Okay, just one little peek. How's this possible, you ask? That's because you're in virtual reality, of course. These cool but very dangerous-looking big cats were alive during the last ice age. What if they decided to show up at your doorstep out of nowhere? Knock knock, a saber-toothed tiger is waiting for you to buy its cookies. Meanwhile, the coelacanth, this massive-looking fish, comes from a lineage that's been around for over 300 million years. We thought they didn't exist anymore until 1938, that is, when a live coelacanth was found again. Since then, they've been roaming the waters of the east coast of Africa and the waters of Sulawesi, Indonesia. Man, I wouldn't want to go for a swim and meet one of these fellas face to face. Their jaw has an intercranial joint, which means their mouth opens up by a lot. This is so they can eat large prey, like me. Not good. They're huge, too. Imagine a fish that's as long as you're tall and weighing as much as an average human. The takahe, a flightless bird, was thought to be gone in the year 1898. They're very cute, small and multicolored, usually not taller than your knee. But picture this. You're out for a hike in the Murchison Mountains. Looking around, you spot the bird you thought was extinct. But there they are, as happy as ever, surviving and chilling. Whole colonies of takahes was indeed found just 50 years after they were pronounced extinct. Good job, tiny little birds. A singing dog. Ever heard of those? Riley does sing sometimes when he's bored or hungry, but these are real performers. New Guinea singing dogs. They've been only recently discovered again in the wild for the first time in 50 years. Still, they were never completely extinct to begin with. New Guineans made sure they were safe next to them. But in the wild, very rare and hard to catch a sight of. Look, there goes one. The New Guinea singing dogs are called so because of their famous high-pitched singing. They sometimes sing together, too. A dog choir of sorts, where they all howl together. I bet they sing better than I do in the shower. Not going far from this area, we have bats, but these ones are sort of different. You see, their ears are enormous. I guess that's why they're called the New Guinea big-eared bats. Clever. The species was found again when one of them was accidentally caught in a bat trap. Until then, I guess they were playing hide-and-seek with us, because up till 1890, they had been thought to be gone. They're still not out of the danger zone because of habitat loss. Imagine you discover a fossil of a species you thought had been extinct for a long time, yet 2 years later, a whole living group of said species is found. Well, this is exactly what happened in 1977 with the Majorcan midwife toad. It's sort of brownish in color with darker brown that makes up its skin spots. Other than that, it's just a small toad with googly eyes. The group of live toads was found close to where the fossil was, on the island of Majorca. There aren't many of them left, about 500 in fact, and as of right now, they're declared vulnerable by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Now, are you a fan of tortoises? You will be when you take a look at this huge beauty. It's called the Ferdinanda Island Galapagos tortoise. It hasn't been seen since 1906, but on February 17, 2019, we were finally able to look at one of these beautiful creatures. It's probably out there with a few of its mates right now, but they also don't allow themselves to be seen. We only know they exist because there's a few tracks and scents. With yet another frog, we have the horned marsupial frog. They're out and about in Ecuador, in the Chocó forest to be more specific. They're called this way because of their distinctive horns directly on top of their eyes. You know the pouch kangaroos use to carry their offspring? Well, the female horned marsupial frog also has that, except it's on the back, so it acts as sort of a backpack. They develop their embryos there, and when they're ready to come out, they hatch as complete infants, unlike regular frogs where they start out as tadpoles. One more toad, the starry night toad or harlequin toad. They're black and covered with loads of white spots all over them. Lost for 30 years, it was discovered back in 2019. Picture them as big bodyguards, water bodyguards to be exact. Oh, that's a very big toad on your screen. Well, for the Arhuaco people, that's exactly what they are, guardians of water. They also have their own name for them, Guna. Sounds like a cheese. When scientists found them yet again, they came across 30 of these little creatures, but initially, they were expecting only one. Well, what a nice surprise. Here's a tiger for you, although it doesn't quite look like your typical tiger. It's called the Tasmanian tiger, and it seemingly disappeared since 1936. But then, out of nowhere, people started seeing them out there in the wild just 5 years ago in 2016. They sort of resemble dogs more than tigers, or a fox maybe. Just take a look at its muzzle. Maybe even a mix of both. Then, a few others started popping up too. And if you happen to think you're seeing one right in front of you, but you're not quite sure, check if they've got stripes on their back. They're definitely out there, but still technically marked as extinct by the IUCN. Okay, picture a horse that looks straight out of a movie scene. Tiny, gorgeous fur, very well behaved. It's tiny, but it's not a pony. It's a Caspian horse. They have an interesting backstory to them. They were discovered by Louise Leyland, who got married to an aristocrat in 1957. Having moved to Tehran, Iran, she didn't quite like how the horses behaved there, so she took matters into her own hands. She took a few people with her, and off they went to the Caspian Sea mountain. And in there, they found 3 of these beautiful tiny little horses. Well, that's how the story goes. Coming up next, a possum that was found in an unexpected place. Guess where? You have 3 options to pick from: hiding in a ski resort, in the Australian outback, or in someone's apartment in the bathroom. Which one do you choose? You have 3 seconds. The right answer is a ski resort. Yes, this possum is called the mountain pygmy possum, and it's originating from Australia. So far, there are 3 different living populations of this tiny possum, but it was believed to be extinct until just 1966. There are fewer than 100 of them, so the IUCN has marked them as critically endangered. Also from Australia is the night parrot, an absolute delight to birdwatchers. Very beautiful, yet mysterious. These little fellas live in very remote areas. You can probably count on the fingers of your hand how many times these birds have been seen since they were found again in 1979. That's how rare they are. Have you ever seen a pygmy tarsier? Neither have I. It was only in 2008 that 3 of them were caught. Scientists don't really want to lose track of their movements again, so what they did was gift them with tiny little collars. This way they can live their life as happy as ever and will know they're safe. The last one I want to tell you about is the tree lobster, but as the name might mistakenly tell you, they're not really lobsters. They're just big black bugs with huge legs. Their extinction story is a sad one. In 1920, a cargo ship got stuck on Lord Howe Island, and it had rats aboard. these rats fled the ship and ran straight to land. Even though tree lobsters are bigger than most insects, they're still relatively small compared to rats. The poor things never stood a chance. Still, in 2004, life shone again for these distinct critters. A pair of Australian scientists were out and about on the island and came across 24 of them. All of them were living beneath one single shrub. Hey, if there's enough space for everyone, it's not small, it's cozy. Bottom line, it's better to be distinct than extinct. Don't you agree? Scientists have finally solved the Loch Ness Monster mystery. Here's the spoiler, you ready? It's not a real monster. It's probably a dinosaur that survived through the ages, or just a bunch of debris floating on the water. Thanks to many findings on the Loch Ness creature, we have proof of another story to tell you. It was 1933 when a man named George Spicer and his wife were driving along the shores of Loch Ness. That's when they saw something massive with a long neck moving across the road. It looked like a creature straight out of the prehistoric era, a dinosaur-like beast unlike anything they'd ever seen. That was the moment that Loch Ness monster theories started spreading around like wildfire. One of the most famous Loch Ness monster sightings came just a year later, in 1934, when a man took a photograph that became the most well-known image of Nessie. That's the nickname she was given. She? Anyways, the photo, known as the surgeon's photograph, showed a long-necked creature rising out of the water, and for years it convinced people that the monster was real. But years later, the truth came out. One of the men who helped take the photo confessed it was all a hoax. The photo had been staged after all. When the photo was published, it had been significantly cropped. This made the animal in the picture look much bigger than in real life, fueling the theories that the Loch Ness monster did in fact exist. In the 1960s, one of the first big scientific attempts to investigate the mystery of the Loch Ness monster happened. A research team took sonar equipment to the lake and spent hours scanning the waters in search of evidence of large creatures. What they found was puzzling. They recorded several objects moving deep in the loch, or lake, with no clear explanation as to what it was. Though the team didn't manage to capture anything definitive, this sighting helped fuel the belief that there was indeed something massive living in Loch Ness. After that, research about the mystery of the Loch Ness monster kept popping up. In 1972, with the help of underwater photography, some researchers managed to capture strange images, which got people's hopes up for a minute. But the truth is, this early research about the Loch Ness monster was far from conclusive. Now, of course, not everyone bought into the mystical, magical theories about the Loch Ness monster. Theory 1, from a professor of zoology at Oxford University, has made it clear that the monster is a biological impossibility. Hey, my pediatrician said that about me, too. Meanwhile, he says that no skeletal remains have ever been found in the region. Plus, no fishermen have ever caught anything resembling the creature in their fishing nets. For him, this works as proof that it simply can't be real. When it comes to the famous photos of the Loch Ness monster as evidence, well, that's pretty simple. The professor offers a more down-to-earth explanation. He argues that these images are either showing floating debris or birds, like cormorants, which have long necks and often appear to be low in the water. When people refute his suggestion, he takes us back to human psychology and explains that people often make mistakes and misjudge the size of things, especially when they just caught a glimpse of it, and even more so when they are hoping to see something specific. Now, many of those alleged photos depict an animal with a long neck and a small head, which has led some to believe that what they're seeing is a plesiosaur, a giant marine reptile that lived 215 million years ago and disappeared with the dinosaurs. The idea of a plesiosaur surviving all these years is a theory that's been around since the first sightings of the creature. But this researcher isn't buying it. He explains that no plesiosaur fossils have been found in the region dating to anything later than 66 million years ago. The idea of a prehistoric creature still lurking in the waters of Loch Ness just doesn't hold up scientifically. Then there's theory number 2, from a British naturalist who has spent over 50 years investigating the Loch Ness Monster phenomenon. His conclusion is a little less dramatic. He believes that most people who report sightings of long-necked creatures are misidentifying other animals. He suggests people think they are seeing a sea serpent. Reports of sightings from the Loch Ness Monster have been around since the 6th century CE, long before they were distilling Scotch whiskey or other explanations. Early reports of these sea serpents describe large creatures with long snake-like bodies and multiple humps. Some say the creatures were as big as boats, and many swore they saw something swimming in the waters. Many of these early sea serpent sightings may have been misunderstandings or exaggerations of normal animals in the loch, like large fish or even swimming birds. They could have been large eels, which are known to live in Loch Ness. These eels, especially when they're moving, might have given the impression of a long, undulating creature in the water. People who saw these eels from a distance, particularly in low light or misty conditions, might have mistaken them for something much more mysterious. Theory number 3 says something else. Nessie is just a series of standing waves. These happen when two boat wakes move in opposite directions, creating a big hump in the water that could look like a creature from a distance. Loch Ness enthusiasts even showed how it works, with footage from Fort Augustus, where a river meets Loch Ness. These enthusiasts had big plans to use drones with infrared cameras and special underwater microphones to search the loch. Now, Loch Ness is massive, stretching around 23 miles long and more than 700 feet deep. So, they thought they needed drones and infrared cameras to put an end to this discussion. But despite everything, they haven't found Nessie. But it's not only the Loch Ness Monster that lacks scientific explanation. There have also been scores of sightings of yetis and sasquatches that no one can really explain. Folks have made movies, dreaming of finding the truth about these creatures. But, according to recent research and evidence, it looks unlikely that we'll ever find definitive evidence of their existence. Science says they can explain Sasquatch sightings, and this is how. Biologists who study wildlife using camera traps, which are set up in remote areas to capture images of passing animals, have long attempted to find elusive species. These cameras detect movement and snap pictures, providing invaluable data on the biodiversity of different ecosystems. As camera traps collect more photos over time, the number of species recorded grows. However, after a while, the number plateaus, suggesting that no new species are being detected. While it's impossible to claim 100% certainty, researchers say that after significant camera deployment, it's safe to say the likelihood of discovering new species, especially large ones like Bigfoot or the Yeti, drops significantly. Camera trap studies have been running for years in regions where these creatures are rumored to live, but so far, no conclusive evidence has surfaced. Instead, the supposed proof of Bigfoot or the Yeti often comes from blurry photos or shaky videos taken by individuals who claim to have encountered them. The scientific understanding of biology also makes the existence of Bigfoot highly unlikely. Often described as a great ape, Bigfoot would have had to evolve in North America. However, great apes evolved in Africa, and the only great ape to make it to the Americas is Homo sapiens, whose ancestors crossed the Bering Strait only about 16,000 years ago. This is far too short a time for a new species like Bigfoot to have evolved. While it may be disappointing for these mysterious creature enthusiasts, the scientific evidence points firmly toward the conclusion that creatures like Bigfoot and the Yeti are more fantasy than reality. After decades of extensive scientific research, it's safe to say that yes, science has solved the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster, and it's pure fiction. So, what do you think?
What's the scariest predator under the ocean? The crocodile? I don't think so. Loch Ness Monster? Please, it never existed. How about the Kronosaurus? Well, it is extinct, but you might be onto something. Let's take a look at what it'd be like if these creatures were still around today. First things first, what on earth was it? The Kronosaurus was a marine carnivore that lived in the cool, high-latitude Eromanga Sea. It covered vast areas of inland Australia between 90 and 120 million years ago, during the early Cretaceous period. Near-complete fossils of the creature were also found near Colombia, which is a country that has a noted connection to prehistoric reptiles and turtles. This fact makes it extremely possible that the monster I'm about to describe existed worldwide. You might have heard saurus and thought, oh, it's a dinosaur. But these were actually reptiles. They were the largest member of the Plesiosauridae family, referred to as plesiosaurs. Fossil evidence suggests they weighed over 20,000 pounds and were roughly 30 feet in length. Just to put that in perspective, the longest crocodile ever measured was a saltwater crocodile by the name of Lolong from the Philippines. It was 20 feet in length and weighed just under 2,500 pounds. And that's still 10 feet shorter and incredibly lighter than the average Kronosaurus, making the crocodile seem like nothing more than a glorified goldfish in comparison. Despite its terrifying length, the most physically daunting feature of the Kronosaurus was its head. Its skull was about 8 feet long, which was actually proportionally large given the size of its body length. Anything that was unfortunate enough to end up inside the Kronosaurus's mouth may have been given false hope. After all, the teeth of the beast weren't actually that sharp. On second thought, I take that back. I wouldn't feel confident around a toothless snake, let alone being inside the mouth of this monster. But it's true that the Kronosaurus's teeth weren't sharp, especially when compared to other carnivorous reptiles, such as crocodiles and alligators. The teeth of this prehistoric sea creature were instead conical. This means that they were cone-like in shape. Unfortunately, this lack of sharpness didn't make them less dangerous. The teeth were enormous and could be up to 12 inches long from the crown tips to the bottom of the roots. This obviously meant that the Kronosaurus had an extremely powerful bite. It was estimated to be up to 30,000 newtons, which is almost twice as powerful as the bite of a large saltwater crocodile. Because of the bluntness of their teeth, they weren't suited for twisting their prey once in their grasp. But the size and shape of the teeth made them perfect for simple open and shut biting. They would have had no problem crushing hard objects such as the toughest of shells any sea turtle could offer. Just like crocodiles, the Kronosaurus is believed to have had a short neck. This may have been an adaptation to allow the beast to successfully catch small, evasive animals. Their body, in general, was fusiform and streamlined. This means it was narrowed at both ends and had very little resistance to the flow of water. The Kronosaurus was also equipped with 4 paddle-like limbs. The hind limbs were larger than the front ones. They could span approximately 7 feet in diameter. All in all, this set the Kronosaurus up to effortlessly propel itself through the waters and be an ultimate predator. Predator X, if you will? That's the name that was given to the fossil of a creature discovered near Svalbard, a Norwegian island group, in 2009. The fossil was identified as a 50-foot-long, 100,000-pound monster with a bite force of 33,000 pounds per square inch. This might be the highest bite force of any known animal. Although Predator X is yet to be classified as any specific type of animal, it was definitely a plesiosaur like the Kronosaurus. And even if it wasn't Predator X, the Kronosaurus was still most definitely a ferocious titan when it roamed Earth's oceans. The Kronosaurus actually got its name from the Greek mythological figure of Cronus, the father of Zeus. Cronus was viewed as a titan from a generation of super powerful beings. So what was it that the Kronosaurus, this terrifying monster, actually feasted on to satisfy its appetite? This creature was known to eat sea turtles, squid, and other larger marine reptiles of that time, such as elasmosaurids and ichthyosaurs. This suggests that if crocodiles existed in the realms of the Kronosaurus, they too might have turned into lunch for the beast. There's evidence from the fossil remains of the Kronosaurus that suggests that they also feasted on sharks, which I know is a disappointment to those of you who view that beast as the king of the ocean. Not when the Kronosaurus was around, my friend. In any case, grounding all kinds of food into small pieces to help digest them would have been difficult without small teeth. This explains the presence of rounded stones found in many of the remains of these sea creatures. Researchers believe these stones may have been swallowed to control buoyancy or to help process food. It's also entirely possible they were accidentally swallowed while feeding on other animals from the seafloor. As if the Kronosaurus even needed to be a meanie with its already existing power and size, there's also evidence to suggest that it indeed might have been. It turns out that after using all its impressive attributes to catch its dinner, the Kronosaurus first liked to play with its food, like a cat does with a mouse. I guess since the hunt was so easy for them, they needed to get their fun from somewhere else. Well, I think now you should have a good idea about these creatures. So let's ask ourselves what it would be like if they were still around today. And by the way, why aren't they? Well, the Kronosaurus was completely finished off by the same KT meteor that took out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. But even before this catastrophic event, they were coming under increased pressure from an even bigger and more vicious family of carnivorous marine reptiles known as mosasaurs. You can't always be a top dog, I guess, or rather, top marine reptile. But what if this never happened, and they were still roaming Earth? Well, this might be obvious, but can you imagine what kind of impact that would have on sea tourism? Based on the impact that famous movies about sharks and killer whales had, what do you think the presence of a Kronosaurus in the ocean would do to beaches? The very creature that would eat sharks and whales for breakfast. Beaches would certainly become a great place to go for a quiet walk, because nobody else would even be there. And what about such activities as boating, surfing, and scuba diving? You think anyone would dare try them, knowing that this 30-foot beast could be lurking beneath them? Let's give humans some credit and assume most of them wouldn't. This would cripple the global sea tourism industry, which is responsible for earning roughly $143 billion every year. Just to make sure this shocking point hits home, the most expensive yacht to ever roam the ocean was called the History Supreme. Its master bedroom was believed to have a statue made of T-Rex's bone and a wall made of meteorite rocks, as well as a 24-karat gold panoramic wall aquarium. Anyway, this yacht was worth nearly $5 billion, meaning you could buy 38 of them with the money lost in potential damages to sea tourism caused by the Kronosaurus. I'm sure that the yacht's owner was happy the beast never made an appearance in their luxurious aquarium. So luxurious, in fact, that some people believe the History Supreme, reportedly owned by some business genius from Malaysia, never even existed. Rumor has it that it was simply an elaborate hoax fabricated by the supposed designer. Anyway, I don't think the trouble would just stop there. People could actually be in serious danger, regardless of being near the ocean or not. No, I'm not about to tell you that this thing would grow legs, adapt to living on land, and start picking us off one by one. At least, I hope not. I'm just going to point out the damage that the Kronosaurus would inflict through its devastating impact on sea trade. In America, ocean transit accounts for 76% of national trade. On top of this, more than 100 vital pharmaceutical products originate in the sea. I'll also state the obvious and point out that the ocean is a huge food source for us humans. The presence of the Kronosaurus could have a great impact on our relationship with the ocean, something we usually take for granted.
Now imagine a creature with a body that is reminiscent of a cuttlefish, with eyes sticking out from stalks like a funky headband, fins on its tail, and a long skinny nose ending in a mouth full of teeth. Or maybe this thing could be a claw. Yep, the Tully monster is on the move. It's definitely one of those freaky creatures you wouldn't like to face while scuba diving somewhere. Luckily, it went extinct 300 million years ago. This unusual marine beast was discovered in the 1950s in Illinois, and scientists couldn't even agree what it really was. Some thought it was a vertebrate, which means a group of creatures with a spine, like us humans. But a team of researchers in Japan studied many fossils of the Tully monster, using advanced laser scanning technology to check them in detail in 3 dimensions. There's still a lot they don't know about the Tully monster, but they managed to realize it didn't have any spine at all. Now the next step was to see what type of invertebrate it was. Could it be vertebrate-like, such as a land sled? Or are we talking about something closer to snails and worms? They also discovered the creature had segmentation in the head area that extended from its body, and that's not something bony creatures have. Still, in recent years, some researchers had the idea the Tully beastie could be related to jawless fish, such as lampreys. These fellows belong to the most ancient group of vertebrates, and are not pleasant to see either. In the case of lampreys, we're not talking about extinct animals. They're still out there somewhere, wandering the ocean and scaring other animals, or you, if you see it in the northern and western parts of the Atlantic Ocean where they live. And they've been here really long, even before the dinosaurs. A long time ago, long before humans or I even existed, there were eurypterids, weird creatures from a group we call arthropods, which includes spiders, insects, and crabs. But eurypterids were unlike anything you've ever seen before. They had a body shape similar to horseshoe crabs, with many segments that made up their body. Instead of legs, they had special appendages at the front that acted like oars. Some even call them giant scorpions, but most eurypterids were actually quite small, except for this special one, which was truly enormous. It could grow to a staggering length of about 8 feet. Wow! The next time you see a crab scuttling along the beach or a spider swimming its web, remember, we're lucky we only got mild versions of their ancient relatives, which, by the way, disappeared hundreds of millions of years ago. Whew. Now, some eurypterids were pretty fierce and fast predators. They would swiftly swim after their prey, chasing them down in the water. Others were more like scavengers, living on the bottom and feeding on whatever they could find along the way. They had a taste for the leftovers, like some sort of cleanup crew of the ancient oceans. Eurypterids loved to spend their time in brackish water environments. It's water with more salinity than fresh water, but still less than seawater. Now imagine you're just floating around and all of a sudden you see this guy. No, it's not some weird tiny spaceship, and you won't see it floating in space, even though that's where it would perfectly fit in, as some weird creature from another planet you'd see in sci-fi movies. You'd actually see it floating in the sea because we're talking about a really small animal with enormous eyes called Dilophosaurus. Each of its eye bulbs was about a quarter of its whole body length. That's what gives it that space look, like it might live on one of the oceans under the surface where we look for life, like Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, or Titan, Saturn's biggest moon. I could easily imagine creatures like Dilophosaurus giving us a warm welcome once we get to Mars, too. Dilophosaurus had great vision. It would keep a keen eye out for any movement in its surroundings. Once it noticed something, it would swiftly launch its spiky appendages forward. At first, these things looked like tools for fixing stuff, but Dilophosaurus actually used them to capture smaller arthropods. The unusual thing is that even though it had such great eyesight, Dilophosaurus still spent most of its time catching prey in brighter waters near the surface. And yet, scientists found its fossils in the rock layers that are more often associated with darker environments, where animals such as deep-sea crinoids and vampire squids reside today. It's confusing. But one of the explanations for this says it's possible these deep-sea creatures actually lived in shallower waters in the past and later ended up in the depths as the geography of our planet changed over time. No one knew what Dilophosaurus really was. It could belong to a group of arthropods, and it seems to me that's where most of the world's weirdest creatures are. Some believe it could be related to mantis shrimp, while others compare it to blind, worm-like crustaceans that live in dark underwater caves. And check out this enormous worm lurking beneath the sandy ocean floor, patiently waiting for its next meal to swim by. These ancient creatures were like stealthy predators, perfectly camouflaged in their sandy lairs. And now, 20 million years later, scientists have found the remains of their hidden hideaways. The burrow they discovered, shaped like the letter L, was found preserved in ancient sediment on the seafloor of Taiwan. It was around 7 feet long and only an inch wide. That's where the ancestors of modern bobbit worms live. Bobbit worms have been around for a long time. They can grow to be a few inches to a whopping 10 feet long. A pretty weird creature dominated the skies at the end of the dinosaur age in North America. We know it as Quetzalcoatlus, and it soared above famous dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops, showing them who the ultimate ruler of the skies was. Quetzalcoatlus belonged to a group of flying reptiles called pterosaurs. They were some of the biggest flying animals ever known to exist. When you think of Quetzalcoatlus, imagine an animal as tall as a giraffe. These incredible creatures had long necks, small bodies, long legs, and wings that were relatively short compared to their size. The biggest of its kind was really massive and held the title of being the largest flying creature of all time. They had long, pointed skulls, while some also had short crests at the back of their heads. And for a long time, researchers were confused about how these giant pterosaurs hunted for food. At first, some even believed that Quetzalcoatlus and its relatives were like giant vultures that scavenged the remains they would find around. They drew such a conclusion because Quetzalcoatlus fossils were found inland, away from the coast where other big pterosaurs were found, such as the crested pteranodon. Plus, many thought these fellas were skilled at skimming, which means lurking over freshwater systems and catching fish. But it appears these massive animals were actually predators with excellent hunting skills. The exact technique they used to catch their prey remains a mystery, though. Now here's another cool discovery, a specific fossil as the oldest evidence of muscle tissue ever found. This fossil belongs to a group of animals that includes modern creatures such as jellyfish, corals, and sea anemones. And it looks so cool and unique, right? It has bundles of fibers arranged in a four-fold symmetrical pattern, similar to what we see in Nedardians today. This arrangement is different from any other fossil from that period. Now, this fossil may look weird, but it helps us understand the evolution of muscle tissue in animals. They, well, all of us actually, got new options for discovering different feeding strategies and generally new things to do thanks to muscles. And it's not like scientists usually get to study fossilized muscles. It's more that they learn about that based on how animals feed, reproduce, move, and do other things. So this cool fossil suggests animals may have had an earlier origin than we used to believe.
Something exciting and kinda unexpected popped out among the rocks of the Ica Valley in Peru. The bones of a really old whale that lived almost 40 million years ago. At first, no one was really impressed because the bones they found were big and weirdly shaped, so people just thought they were looking at giant boulders. I mean, that's cool too, but things got way better when they realized those were the remains of a very large, ancient animal that roamed along the coast of ancient Peru. Plus, it was probably the heaviest creature that ever lived. Sorry, blue whale, I know you worked hard to get to the top. The length of over 100 feet and weight of more than 200 tons brought you the status of the biggest animal on our planet. But it seems you've held the title long enough. Time to hand it over to our next candidate, and that one's really gigantic. This ocean beast was probably shorter than the blue whale, but heavier, with a weight that could be between 93 tons and 370 tons. If it's closer to the higher number, it'll make Pericetus the biggest animal ever known to have lived on Earth. And it seems its weight was the result of having extremely thick, dense bones. You can see such bones today in manatees or some other early whales. Dense bones are a great tool for such marine mammals. This feature makes them heavy and allows them to stay submerged most of the time. But at the same time, if their body was too heavy, they would end up sinking all the time and they would waste too much energy to move back up to the surface. So, to avoid sinking, marine mammals need to have enough lighter tissues, like muscles and fat, to help them float in the water without using too much energy. Now, scientists didn't have the whole skeleton, which makes it hard to tell how big the animal was. but they used the ratio of the heavy bones to the lighter tissues in other marine mammals to estimate the overall weight of this giant ancient whale. Experts found these fossils about 13 years ago and spent the next decade freeing the whale from the rock. Its anatomy and age showed this whale was a cousin of Basilosaurus, a whale that had a long snout full of sharp teeth, and a sleek body similar to that of an eel. Even if Pericetus wasn't bigger than the blue whale, it was still a giant that ruled the ocean depths. Unlike modern whales, there's a possibility that this ancient fellow was a predator that liked to go after bigger prey. And this also changes how we see the history of whales. Scientists used to think these magnificent creatures became really big about 5 million years ago when they started eating lots of small creatures. But here's the proof that giant whales existed even before that. But it's still unclear how this whale managed to find enough food to sustain its enormous body. Plus, it's still hard to tell what exactly this ancient creature had on its menu. It was pretty large and not such a fast swimmer, so it's possible it searched for food in shallow waters. Then it probably ate crustaceans, clams, or some other small animals hiding in the sand. One theory says it was a scavenger, which basically means it munched on remains of everything that would come its way. It's not so unusual to find marine animals in deserts. Many of these regions used to be covered with water anyway. The Sahara in Africa is a perfect example. About 50 to 100 million years ago, this was not a dry desert, but a shallow saltwater body called the Trans-Saharan Seaway. The land is not wet there anymore, of course, but people who lived in that area knew about it because they used to find old shells across the desert. The sea was about 164 feet deep. That sounds enough for a nice swim. Some would say this area looked like modern Puerto Rico, with lots of sun and shallow water. Mangrove forests were a common thing as well as seafloors covered with mollusks, like snails and clams. The marine sediment that was left behind after the sea had dried up is full of different fossils. And the animal that lived in that ancient underwater world didn't look friendly. Plus, they were much bigger than their relatives from modern times, so a regular-sized human would end up as a snack, not even a whole meal. Normally, when animals live on small islands, they can become much bigger than their relatives from the mainland. This is something we call island gigantism, and it happens because there are more resources or fewer predators on islands. Maybe the same thing happened in the Trans-Saharan Seaway. Even though it wasn't an actual island, the water moved in and out, which created little pockets of water. And specific conditions in these pockets might have helped animals grow bigger. So we're talking about giant sea snakes, catfish, and fish that no longer exist today. One had incredibly strong jaws, and the animal used them to eat hard things and even crush shells. Their teeth showed they were fierce predators other animals had every reason to be afraid of. They went through some changes when it came to diet, similar to some types of piranhas. And the competition to get to the top of the food chain wasn't a joke. Not when there were also such large predators as sharks, crocodiles, and ancient relatives of elephants. Sahara went through different phases. If you could use a time machine and take a peek at Earth's largest hot desert as it was about 6,000 years ago, you wouldn't have to struggle with sand and heat. You'd have a nice walk through a green and pretty lush place. In the past, people who lived in that area didn't leave drawings on cave walls that showed camels, sand dunes, and scorpions. All those things you'd see in today's Sahara. Instead, they drew crocodiles. That's additional evidence that the Sahara used to have a lot of water and plants enough to support these big yet scary animals. Around 3 billion years ago, Earth might have been mostly covered with water. Today, it's about 71% of its surface, but it seems that our planet used to be a giant ocean world with no continents at all, just some scattered islands. Scientists studied special rocks in Western Australia that formed in a place deep under the ocean called a hydrothermal vent system. To explain this better, it's important to mention two common oxygen types, O16 and O18. O18 is heavier because it has extra neutrons. O16 evaporates from water more easily, and as researchers studied an old ocean floor, they found a lot of O18, more than in today's oceans. This way, they realized ancient Earth had less dry land than Earth today. Australia is a good spot to conduct these studies because a long time ago, it also used to be a beautiful place with large animals and lush rainforests. But as time went by, the land became drier and Australia had more deserts formed, such as the Great Victoria Desert. Rainforest remained only on the edges of the continent. What happens with deserts across the globe is called desertification. That's when land that used to be good for growing things turns into a desert or something similar. Our planet changes over time, together with its climate. But desertification also happens because of human activities, like mining, farming, and building cities. And when land turns into a desert, it's a problem because it can't support people and animals anymore. Food doesn't grow there. There's not enough clean water, and animals lose their homes. To help with this problem, there's a plan many countries agreed to. They decided to work with farmers to take care of the land, fix damaged areas, and manage water better. All in all, to make our planet a better place for life. In 1975 in Puerto Rico, a farmer saw most of his goats lying lifeless on the ground. He got closer and saw that the animals were stiff and had 2 puncture marks on their necks. Goats were not the only animals that were hurt. Many pigs, cows, and geese lost their lives too. They all had the same distinctive bite marks on their necks, and all had been drained of their vital fluids. The locals immediately jumped to conclusions and blamed dogs, and the authorities didn't bother to do a better investigation and just said dogs had done it without looking for any proof. A couple of days later, though, many more animals were found deceased. Among them was a cow that had literally been opened, and it had a lot of scratches on its head. The farmer next door reported that his chickens had been destroyed by something. In just a few weeks, the creature took the lives of 90 farm animals. After some time, another farmer said that 10 of his goats had been drained, 7 had been hurt, and 11 were missing. This time, the authorities didn't waste any time and started the monster hunt, but they had no luck finding the culprit. The incident was all over the local newspaper, and the beast was named the Vampire of Mocha. The incident caught the attention of the Agricultural Commission, and scientist Juan Rivera was tasked to solve this otherworldly mystery. His first suspect was a Puerto Rican boa. This non-venomous snake can grow to be a little over 6 feet. Still, its diet consists of only small prey. It's also very shy of humans and other animals. It avoids bigger creatures at all costs. You're more likely to see fish climbing trees than this boa taking down a whole cow. Near the crime scene, a large cave was discovered, and we all know that weird creatures like living in dark, cold caves. In the cave, they found some crazy-looking bats. As we've seen in movies, bats can turn into vampires, so they must be the culprit. But no, bats were as innocent as they could be. Their favorite food wasn't cows or goats, it was figs. They were peaceful fruit-eating bats that didn't care about animals. Again, the researcher hit a wall. Suddenly, all the terror stopped in July 1975. It seemed like the creature had vanished into thin air, but not for long. 2 decades later, 62 miles from the previous site, more animals were found. A local vet examined them. He was terrified to discover that every animal had 2 precisely cut holes like he had never seen before. The animals were anemic and looked like they'd passed away recently. By the looks of it, the creature's favorite food was goats, and that's how it got the infamous name we all heard of, chupacabra, which means the goat sucker. Dogs, chickens, rabbits, and other animals were not off the menu. In short time, the chupacabra took 1,000 farm animals. Now, this animal had a name,
But people still had zero idea about what the chupacabra looked like, which was terrifying. In Canovanas, Madeleine and her mother reported seeing a weird creature that could have been the chupacabra. They said it had been walking on two legs like a human and resembled a kangaroo. They mentioned that the monster also had spikes on the back, no ears, large dark eyes, and 2 holes for a nose. It had 2 arms with 3 fingers. The chupacabra seemed to like Madeleine's house because her husband and his coworker found it in the garage. They tried to capture it but didn't succeed. Madeleine later drew a detailed sketch of it. Many people saw the sketch and reported seeing a similar creature. They claimed it had strong legs and wings and smelled like sulfur. Take all these descriptions with a grain of salt. If they'd been true, they would have been all over the news. But still, keep in mind these descriptions. They will be important later in the story. In 1976, on some talk show, they talked about the chupacabra, and the show quickly went viral. Soon, people started reporting having seen a similar creature in Florida and Mexico. Many said that the stories were like a unicorn rodeo. They were totally made up. In Mexico, 2 skeptical inquiries, Patricia and Mario, laid traps around those farms where the chupacabra had allegedly been seen. They caught some animals in their traps, but no sign of the goat sucker. They only captured wild dogs. The police stated that the chupacabra was just a wild dog, not a mythical creature. And still, in the next 5 years, there were numerous sightings of the chupacabra worldwide. On the 13th of August of the year 2000, a farmer from Nicaragua found 25 of his sheep and 35 of his neighbor's sheep hurt. So he decided to take the matter into his own hands. One night, he was patiently waiting in the pitch-black night for the creature to appear. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he saw something and managed to hit it. The creature passed away. Finally, they had proof that the chupacabra was not just a fairy tale. It was a big thing. Later, the chupacabra was examined by a vet. The vet was shocked because he had no idea what the creature was. Remember Madeleine's description? Well, the vet described the animal differently, but his story turned out to be more plausible. This chupacabra had large teeth, giant claws, greenish eyes, bat-like skin, and a crest sticking out of its back. The vet concluded that the animal was some kind of hybrid. They thought it was a cross between a wolf and a crocodile, but it sounds like an exaggeration and is hard to believe. We all know that such a mix is impossible. They did some tests on the body at the university in Nicaragua, and the results didn't quite deliver what they had expected. The animal was a wild dog with mange. Mange is an itchy skin disease that causes dogs to lose their hair. It's also highly contagious. When a dog has mange, their skin becomes scaly and wrinkled. When they returned the body, the farmer noticed it wasn't his chupacabra. 7 years later, another body was found in Texas. Phyllis Cannon returned to her farm and noticed that some of her chickens had passed away. All seemed to be anemic. Later, she saw coyote-looking creatures that didn't have any hair. More of her animals were harmed, so she had to set up cameras on her farm. But unfortunately, like always, she didn't manage to record anything. Surprisingly, she got a call from a local farmer who had found the chupacabra hit by a car. Later, another body was found much closer to her farm. She took some pictures of the animal, and soon, those images were all over the internet. Phyllis was curious and sent 5 DNA samples to 5 different universities. The results didn't match any animal in the archives. Researchers had no idea what it was, but it wasn't a dog. Phyllis still has one animal in her freezer and a taxidermied specimen in her house. There are many theories about the chupacabra. Some claim that the animal is a genetically modified monkey that escaped the lab. Others state that it's some mysterious, otherworldly creature. The most consistent hypothesis is that the chupacabra is a mix between a Mexican wolf and a coyote with mange. Now, do you remember that Phyllis said that she had sent samples to 5 universities and no match had been found? Well, it turned out she hadn't been telling the truth. At one university, they found that the animal was a mix between a coyote and a Mexican wolf and that it had mange. Animals with mange are weak and will likely try to hunt farm animals to survive. People, when they see something they don't know, tend to exaggerate, which is why all witnesses describe the animal differently.
Australia used to have its own giants. Those were huge animals that could have dwarfed anything living on this continent these days. Scientists found the remains of many of those ancient creatures in the Narracuta Caves in South Australia, 4 hours away from Adelaide. It's a lovely region, but it can be treacherous. Watch out for holes the ground is pocked with. Known as pitfall traps, many of them are no wider than a coffee table. They're deep and plunge into the darkest of caverns. One of such caverns is called Victoria Fossil Cave, and it's a treasury that's been hiding the bones of around 45,000 animals for centuries. Some of the oldest bones belong to creatures far more terrifying than any animal you can encounter today. Those were the ancient Australian Megafauna, huge beasts that roamed the continent during the Pleistocene epoch. During those, there were giant snakes, huge flightless birds, wombat-like creatures the size of a rhinoceros, and many others. One of the largest examples of the Australian megafauna scientists have discovered so far is the Diprotodon. That giant herbivorous creature was 10 feet long and 6.5 feet tall, and weighed more than 6,000 pounds, about as much as a small Asian elephant. Even though this terrifying beast didn't eat meat, it could have smashed other animals with its sheer weight. Scientists have found the remains of hundreds of such creatures all over Australia, so it's safe to say that no other animal from that time or in that location was larger than this giant. Despite its creepy appearance, the Diprotodon was a relative to the modern-day wombat, and those are known to sometimes pounce humans. The Diprotodon had toes that pointed inward and were well suited for digging burrows. On the other hand, Diprotodon was a giant, and it was unlikely that it used to do so. It was likely a trait it had inherited from its smaller burrowing ancestors, or it could have used its claws to search for roots. This theory is supported by the fact that the animal's pouch was facing backward. It prevented any dirt from collecting inside while the creature was digging. Since this animal was so big, it didn't have to worry much about predators. Up until 60,000 years ago, when the first humans appeared on the continent, full-grown Diprotodons only had to look out for creatures like the Quincana. Measuring in at a whopping 20 feet long, the Quincana was a land crocodile. It lived in Australia from around 20 million to 40,000 years ago. It disappeared along with most other mega creatures of the last ice age. It's thought to be the result of the first humans coming to the continent. Even though the Quincana was extremely fast and dangerous, it was possible that this creature got outcompeted by human hunters who took all available prey. Unlike modern crocodiles that are mainly aquatic, that mighty beast was a land dweller. Scientists figured it out by studying the Quincana's legs. They were able to support and carry the body clear off the ground. It means there was no escape for ancient people once the Quincana spotted them. Modern crocodiles can only push themselves along on their bellies. Such an adaptation allowed the Quincana to chase its prey for long periods of time, exhausting it in the process. Another creepy feature of this ancient monster was its teeth. Aquatic crocs have conical teeth. Those are great for gripping and holding on to prey underwater. But Quincana had knife-like teeth, ideal for slicing soft-bodied animals like, mammals. Another Australian monster, Thylacoleo, wasn't all that large, but it didn't make it any less terrifying. It was still among the top predators and the biggest carnivorous animals in Australia. This creature was a true oddity of nature, even by prehistoric standards. First, its teeth resembled not those of a regular predator, but those of a rodent. Its front incisors were enlarged, taking the place of canines. Premolars were also shaped like blades. They were used for cutting flesh and bone. At first, scientists thought that Thylacoleo used those teeth to eat nuts and fruits. But later, a study showed that the use of such teeth was better suited on necks and spines. The jaws of this ancient creature were immensely powerful. A 220-pound Thylacoleo had a bite force similar to that of a present-day 550-pound lion. It means that the animal could easily bring down prey much larger than itself. Then there was Thylacoleo's tail. It had strong muscles which provided the animal with the ability to use the tail as support when tackling large prey. The thiacoleo had retractable claws, and this feature is very uncommon among marsupials. It allowed the animal to keep its razor-sharp hooks from getting blunt and could help it get a better grip on its prey. Scientists are quite sure that, like today's leopards, the thiacoleo could climb trees and jump on other animals from above. It was done so fast and stealthily, they never knew what hit them. The creature's rear feet support this theory. The first toe there was reduced, but the foot had a rough pad like what modern-day possums have. It allowed them to have a better grip while climbing. Right after scientists found the first skull of the Meliolania, this animal was classified as a lizard. That's why its name translates to small groomer. But after they discovered more complete fossils, it turned out that the Meliolania was a giant turtle. But that's not all. It was one of the largest land turtles to ever have existed. The main reason researchers initially believed the creature to be a lizard was the fact that its skull was adorned with a series of spikes. It's something the modern-day horned lizard can boast. But even after discovering the true nature of the Meliolania, scientists still don't know how to properly catalog it. It might have been a creature that folded its neck under its spine, or it could have folded it to the side. Beside those defensive mechanisms on its head, the Meliolania was also equipped with a spiked tail, which was probably used to prevent predators from attacking the animal from behind. Most species of the Meliolania disappeared around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago because of humans who hunted them to extinction in both Australia and on the surrounding islands. It took around 2 centuries for these turtles to go extinct in that region of the globe. The Megalania was a giant Australian lizard that existed at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. It looked like a Komodo dragon and the Australian monitor lizard, which are both believed to be Megalania's closest living relatives. Fossils tell us that the ancient animal was anywhere from 15 to 26 feet in length. Ow! The youngest fossil remains of this ancient Australian monitor lizard date back to about 50,000 years ago. The first indigenous settlers must have encountered Megalania, which led to the lizard's extinction. Originally, scientists thought that the Megalania was the only member of the genus Megalania, but these days it belongs to the genus Varanus, which means that the prehistoric creature is closely related to other Australian monitor lizards. Our next giant creature on our list was once dubbed an ostrich on steroids. I mean, look at it. It was the last of the thunderbirds to go extinct in Australia. The Genyorus lived on the continent at the same time as early humans. They might have coexisted for 15,000 years or so before the huge bird eventually disappeared. This theory has some proof. The bird's fossils found along with human artifacts. Some cave paintings also depict flightless birds similar to the Genyorus in size and shape. Although it wasn't the largest bird in Australia, the goose-like creature was still as tall as a grown-up man and weighed around 550 pounds. Even a modern-day ostrich can be dangerous if it feels threatened. Imagine meeting its giant prehistoric relative. Scientists are still arguing about its diet. Many believe the creature was an herbivore, but there's still a chance that the Genyornis was a partial scavenger. Its small, stubby wings and powerful hoof-like legs hint that the bird could have been a plant eater. But its huge beak and exceptionally deep lower jaw evoke suspicion. Such features are highly unusual in birds.
Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Argentinosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Argentinosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balænoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Likouala is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Likouala were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Likouala was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The pterodostro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The pterodostro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth, and one of the most recognizable ones. There are 2 species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
You decided to go scuba diving for the first time. The water is clear and the sun is shining on the seabed. You take a few selfies and the fish swimming by when suddenly the ocean goes pitch black. You look up and, oh my, what is that gigantic animal? It's definitely not a shark, not a whale. Is it a turtle? Yup, but fear not, it's not gonna hurt you. If you had lived on this same Earth about 72 million years ago, then maybe this could have really happened to you. Scientists have recently found the fossils of a gigantic marine turtle that could have grown as big as 12 feet. If you don't have any idea of how big that is, let's see some examples.
That's the average length of a hippopotamus. 6 golden retrievers, or 2 Michael Jordans stacked on top of each other. The turtle's scientific name is an homage to that old-school sea monster called Leviathan. Maybe you remember this from old-school history lessons. The Leviathan is supposedly a mythical creature that would swallow entire ships or people that were deemed too greedy by the creature. Can you imagine being swallowed by this humongous sea turtle? No, thank you. The fossils of this gigantic creature began to be excavated between 2016 and 2021, all the way in northeastern Spain. The first fossil was located by a hiker in the Spanish Pyrenees, and it was around 8 inches long. The pelvis of this turtle alone measured around 35 inches. It would definitely be one of the biggest turtles today if it hadn't gone extinct. FYI, the largest living sea turtles today can reach up to 6 feet in length, which is already pretty big. Now, how about a gigantic prehistoric scorpion? I bet most people here are not huge fans of these creatures, especially since they're poisonous. Which is why the thought of a 9-foot-long aquatic scorpion might be the stuff of nightmares. Let's just say that if they hadn't gone extinct some 400 million years ago, lakes and rivers would be much more dangerous places for humans today. These gigantic insects were considered to be apex predators in their time, hunting everything from fish to other animals, even of their own kind. Yikes! I got goosebumps just imagining these creatures. Should we thank the asteroid that hit our planet now or later on in this video? Another prehistoric animal that would shock humans if it were still alive is the so-called Megatherium, a gigantic sloth. This huge sloth is believed to have grown up to 20 feet long, and its weight could be up to 8,000 pounds. It was found in the woodlands and grasslands of South America. The creature used to stand on its 2 feet in order to reach leaves on high branches. These giant sloths had huge claws. They helped them climb trees. I gotta say, I feel uncomfortable imagining these elephant-sized sloths climbing trees. Oh, of course, some dinosaurs will make our super-sized creatures list. But before that, here's a fun fact. Did you know some dinosaurs are still alive today? Scientists have proven that birds are classified as theropod dinosaurs. Such infamous creatures as the T-Rex and Velociraptor belonged to this group. I'm sure you've heard these names even before you watched Jurassic Park. The Velociraptor is that scary dino that breaks into the kitchen. Well, they evolved, gained some feathers, and turned into various species of birds we know today. That means that any bird from chickens to those little blue ones is a direct descendant of dinosaurs. Now, does the name Spinosaurus ring a bell? You can see this huge dinosaur in some museums today. Its fossils, I mean. The Spinosaurus was one of the biggest land predators to walk Earth. Actually, to walk its land and water, since scientists believe that this dino was semi-aquatic. It fed mostly on meat, which means humans would be its natural prey if it lived today. This meat-eating dino lived around 90 to 100 million years ago. It was about 60 feet long, 12 feet high, and weighed up to 22 tons. Its head was around the size of 8 bowling balls and was shaped like a crocodile's face. Basically, the Spinosaurus was a big African elephant with the face of a crocodile. Just kidding. But that would look funny though, wouldn't it? A much more attractive dino was this guy. It's considered to be the largest dinosaur that has ever lived on our planet. What made it so big was its extremely long neck and very long tail. You wouldn't want to stand behind this creature, believe me. If it decided to swish its tail, you'd get catapulted very far away. This creature lived around 100 million years ago, and its fossils were first found in Argentina around 2012. The dino measured 120 feet from head to tail,
which made it almost as big as an American football field in width. And have I mentioned it weighed almost as much as a space shuttle? A staggering 75 tons. If it had been a carnivore, it would have probably been the greatest predator. But this big guy was a peaceful herbivore that had such a long neck that it could eat leaves from high trees. Cute, right? We must also talk about the Shastasaurus. As the name suggests, this animal is popularly known as the Mount Shasta lizard. Even though it was a marine reptile and probably never set foot on the mountain itself, this dino was usually around 23 feet long, but there was a specific strand of this species that could get as big as 69 feet long, about the size of the great blue whale. This made it the biggest marine reptile to have ever lived. A fun fact about the Shastasaurus is that scientists believe it didn't even have teeth, which means it could only feed on soft-bodied prey, such as squid, for example. The next animal on our list is the blue whale. Believe it or not, the biggest living animal on Earth actually started small. These days, the average mature blue whale can reach up to 100 feet in length and weigh up to 200 tons. That's more or less the weight of 40 elephants put together, or 30 Tyrannosaurus rexes, or 2,670 average-sized people. Blue whales have to eat up to 50 million calories per day to support that body. That's the equivalent of 30,000 Big Macs, just FYI. But blue whales weren't always this big. They actually evolved from a four-legged mammal that lived on Earth around 48 million years ago. Their ancestor was called Pakicetus, and it was only 6 feet long. Here's a fun fact. To be able to live in the water as one does today, the blue whale had to go through some intense adaptations. A blue whale can replace up to 80 to 90% of oxygen in its lungs each time it takes a breath. A human replaces only up to 15% for comparison. It allows these animals to dive for up to 1 hour at a time, down to a staggering depth of 330 feet. Elephants were bound to make the list. Elephants are currently the largest land animals on Earth. They can grow to be about 13 feet tall and weigh up to 7 tons. That's pretty small if we compare it to the other animals that once lived on Earth, right? But if we placed a 6-foot-tall human next to an elephant, we'll see it's not at all that small. African elephants are bigger than their close relatives, Asian elephants, and they have a similar lifespan to humans, up to 70 years. Pokemon might have made us collectively wish that salamanders were real-life dragons, although they're not. They can still be pretty cool, though. There's a giant species of salamander that is known to be the largest living amphibian. They can grow to be as long as a regular-sized human, reaching up to 6 feet. I bet that wouldn't be a pleasant underwater encounter.
What do Paris Hilton and Chris Hemsworth have in common? Well, apparently, they both want to bring animals back to life. But we're not talking about making your favorite pet live forever. Nope. These celebs are actually helping a science company bring back animals that no longer exist, like the mammoth, the Tasmanian tiger, and even the iconic dodo. If everything goes according to plan, these fascinating creatures could be walking among us again by 2028. This groundbreaking effort is led by a company called Colossal Biosciences. At this very moment, they're working on a way to revive the core genes of animals that disappeared from Earth ages ago. The idea is to replicate those genes using DNA from a close living relative. If that's all Greek to you, don't worry. We'll break it down a bit later. So, the mammoth is one of the animals they plan to bring back, and people are especially hyped about it. These incredible, massive creatures roamed parts of Africa, Europe, Asia, and North America until about 4,000 years ago. Some people might mix them up with modern elephants, but there are some key differences. For starters,
They had huge curved tusks that curled inward and were used to dig for food. They also adapted to survive in freezing climates, like having 2 layers of thick fur to keep their blood warm. But mammoths and elephants do have a lot in common. The woolly mammoth shares 99.5% of its genes with its closest relative, the Asian elephant. That's huge because it means that mammoths are genetically closer to Asian elephants than Asian elephants are to African elephants, for example. The company's bold plan is to create a living, walking elephant-mammoth hybrid that looks just like the ones that used to roam the planet. This animal will look like, walk like, and even sound like a woolly mammoth, but most importantly, it'll be able to live in the same ecosystem that the mammoth left behind. If the scientists succeed in bringing back enough of these creatures, one of their big goals is to help restore the Arctic tundra ecosystem. But how do they actually plan to create the mammoth? Here's their plan. First, they need to find well-preserved samples of woolly mammoths in places like Alaska, for example. Then they'll need to sequence the mammoth's genome and the genome of its closest relative, the Asian elephant. The next step is to identify the important genes that made the woolly mammoth perfectly adapted to cold temperatures, like its shaggy hair, curved tusks, and dome-shaped cranium. In other words, they need to identify which genes make the mammoth, well, the mammoth. Now comes the interesting part. They will use top-notch gene editing tools, kind of like scissors, to cut the Asian elephant DNA and replace those spots with the mammoth sequence. This will allow them to create a new cell line and, later, an embryo. This embryo will grow inside a healthy female Asian elephant, who will be the surrogate. And just like that, a new, cold-adapted elephant will be born. Or at least, that's what scientists hope. Specialists predict that this Mammoth 2.0 could be on Earth as early as 2028. The reason it will take a while is that their gestation period is around 22 months. But if that deadline feels too far for you, there is actually a chance we could get a surprise a lot sooner. That's because some of the other animals they plan to revive have a much shorter gestation period, like Australia's thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger. The company is also doing whatever it takes to give this animal a second shot at life. And the good news is that the process seems to be well advanced. Recently, the group announced that the Tasmanian tiger's genome is about 99% complete. This animal was native to the Australian mainland and the islands of Tasmania and New Guinea. A big part of the Tasmanian tiger population disappeared over 3,000 years ago. But about 5,000 of them kept roaming around until pretty recently. It's believed that the last thylacine passed away in 1936. To revive the Tasmanian tiger, scientists first need a sample of the ancient animal. So they took RNA molecules from a 110-year-old preserved head that had been kept in ethanol. The team was really lucky because it's rare to find old samples that are so well preserved, allowing scientists to use advanced DNA analysis techniques. And by that, I mean they did a full, complete analysis. By studying RNA samples from important tissue areas like the tongue, nasal cavity, brain, and eyes, experts were able to learn a bunch of interesting things about the Tasmanian tiger. They could figure out how its brain worked, and also what this beast could smell, see, and taste. By the way, these semi-nocturnal animals had a special appetite for small rodents, lizards, and birds. After finding the perfect sample, the process of reviving it will be pretty much the same as with the mammoth, but with an elephant as a DNA donor, of course. In the case of the Tasmanian tiger, its closest living relative is a small marsupial called the fat-tailed dunnart. Even though this animal is small, it is a ferocious carnivore. So experts believe the whole DNA editing process will work just fine with its sequence. Their goal is to turn a fat-tailed dunnart cell into a thylacine cell. To accomplish that, they did more than 300 unique genetic changes into a dunnart cell. So there is no doubt they're pushing all the boundaries to make the dream of reviving animals a reality. This project also plans to revive the iconic dodo. You know, that funny-looking bird from the paradisiacal island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean? And here, things get a little trickier, since we don't know much about this creature, which has origins that go back about 23 million years. Basically, the only clues we have about what dodos looked like when they were alive come from a handful of drawings, paintings, and written descriptions from the 17th century. But since those pictures are all pretty different from each other, and only a few of them were based on real live dodos, we're still not 100% sure what they actually looked like. And as for how they behaved, well, we don't know much about that either. That's why reviving this long-absent legend will be super interesting and really enlightening. The sample they used to extract an old dodo genome came from a skull in the collection of the Natural History Museum of Denmark. And the dodo's closest living relative, which will provide the host cells, is the Nicobar pigeon, a gray bird with colorful features found in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in India. If everything goes smoothly, in a couple of years, we might see the fabulous and iconic dodo with our own eyes. Reviving animals might sound impossible, but science and technology together can be a real game changer, not only by protecting today's animals, but also by restoring species that disappeared from the planet long ago. Actually, we've already pulled this off. A wild goat called the bucardo, also known as the Pyrenean ibex, went extinct in the year 2000. But 3 years later, scientists managed to bring it back to life, using a method pretty similar to what we've talked about in this video. It took 57 tries, but one of them finally worked, and a bucardo clone was born. Unfortunately, the animal only lived for 10 minutes. You might think that wasn't a success, but it was actually a huge step forward in the whole animal revival field. Now, specialists can only hope the project to bring back the dodo, the mammoth, and the Tasmanian tiger go a bit better.
A piece of whale rib has recently been found in a North Carolina mine. Not a big deal, some might think. Hey, why can't a whale be a miner, right? But this fragment offers scientists a unique glimpse at the interactions between prehistoric sharks and whales from around 3 to 4 million years ago. The thing is, 3 tooth marks embellish the rib. That means that the whale was once badly bitten by an animal with a super powerful jaw. Judging by the spacing between the tooth marks, and it reaches almost 2.5 inches. This animal could be a megalithic shark. I'm talking about the megalodon. Or it could be a different shark species which was around at that time. The curvature of the shark's jaw shows that the animal was relatively small, between 13 and 20 feet long. Yeah, small. As for the whale, it seems to be the ancestor of a great blue or humpback whale. Researchers are amazed. You don't usually expect to find evidence of animal interaction and behavior preserved in the fossil record. After examining the sample carefully, they concluded that the shark must have gone away with a mouthful, but the whale had survived because most of the fossil fragment is covered with what is known as woven bone. It quickly forms in response to localized infection. Such bone isn't particularly strong, and later the body remodels it into compact bone tissue. But it takes time. The presence of this bone means that the healing was incomplete and the whale passed away 2 to 6 weeks after the unfortunate encounter. On the other hand, its demise could have been unrelated to the infection and injury. Only a handful of fossils show such kinds of interactions between ancient animals. You can often find bite marks on fossils indicating where the animal passed away and its carcass was scavenged. But this fossil is one of a few examples that not only show a wound inflicted by another animal, but also demonstrate that the prey survived. All fossils are exciting for paleontologists. Yes, they need to get out more. But some might look terrifying to regular people. For example, look at this picture of tentacle arms and octagonal-shaped heads. When it first appeared in mass media, internet users claimed that it was some ancient organism that had come from space. Others thought the story was fake, but in fact, both the picture and the fossil are real. The fossil is known as a mortality plate, a fossilized representation of a mass extinction event of one or several species. The fossil actually contains more than a dozen specimens of a type of marine organism called a crinoid. Despite their looks, crinoids were not plants but marine animals. This particular species lived deep underwater on the seafloor. Crinoids were related to starfish, sea urchins, and brittle stars. These creatures could attach themselves to the seafloor with stalks made up of flexible porous discs connected by soft tissue. The stalks were hollow, and that's where the animal's nervous system was located. Crinoids absorbed oxygen through thin-walled tube feet. The creatures usually reached the length of more than 8 inches and had 5 arms lined with leathery-looking, tentacle-like structures. They fed on plankton and sloughed off organic material. Now, even though these fossil finds seem to be super exciting, few creatures in the fossil record confuse scientists as much as the Tully monster. This curious sea creature sported a toothy, trunk-like snout and eyes splayed out on a rigid rod. But the most bizarre thing? It has been impossible to classify. Researchers have been considering a variety of organisms, for example, segmented worms, swimming slugs, and primitive eel-like creatures, since the monster was discovered in 1966. Recently, they have even tried to connect it to some species of jawless fish with a backbone-like structure. A team of scientists from Japan has used high-resolution laser scanners to examine the anatomy of Tully monster fossils in 3D. They concluded that the enigmatic fossil might be an invertebrate after all, and still, the true identity of the creature remains elusive. In the 1950s, amateur fossil hunter Francis Tully found a ghostly imprint of a torpedo-shaped organism with a huge tail fin in the Mizon Creek fossil beds in Illinois. Tully had never seen anything similar to the torpedo structure. He took his find to Chicago's Field Museum of Natural History. Paleontologists working there were baffled as well. Since then, scientists haven't been able to determine where the creature fits on the phylogenetic family tree, or where they should spend Thanksgiving. In 1741, an explorer and captain named Vitus Johansen Bering led an expedition to map the coast of Alaska. The ship he was on got shipwrecked on what later became known as Bering Island, and they got hungry. Half the crew survived thanks to the discovery of an extremely large sea cow. With the meat of these animals nourishing them, the sailors managed to build a small ship from the wreckage and return home. On their way back, a scientist who was among them spent his time documenting the animals and plants they had found. The sea cow was particularly interesting because without it, the crew wouldn't have survived. These animals were more than 26 feet long and weighed around 10 tons. All sea cows are members of the order Sirenia, marine mammals more closely related to elephants than cows. The scientists described them as having black skin, a small head, and stubby forelimbs. Those sea cows floated on the water's surface, munching on kelp. After the information about these animals became widespread, sea otter fur trading expeditions made use of that convenient depot en route. Sea cows were docile and could be easily hunted. Long story short, within 27 years after the scientists mentioned those animals, they were driven to extinction. But it's not the saddest part. The fossil record reveals a much deeper and darker history. Fossils of sea cows have been discovered all over the world, from Japan to Mexico. It means that the animal once thrived in the vast kelp beds around the entire North Pacific Rim. That small population discovered by the expedition was probably the last remains of a once much larger and way healthier population. More likely, Aboriginal hunting had already reduced the numbers of these animals to near extinction levels, and the final blow came from Western hunters. The living close relatives of those ancient sea cows are rarely hunted today. Still, they're under threat of extinction themselves. To some, this amazing fossil might look a bit disturbing. Slaves' lentils are fossils that belong to animals called nummelites. They lived and thrived in a warm, shallow sea covering part of Egypt around 40 million years ago. The name nummelites hints at the fact that larger specimens resemble coins, and in Egyptian folklore, they're even referred to as angel's money. These creatures have a simple, single-celled structure, which contrasts with their super intricate skeleton. Look at this series of spiral overlapping whorls. Each whorl is divided into countless tiny chambers. Nummelites can grow to be 4 inches in diameter, and still, they are the fossils of single-celled animals related to amoeba. How and why did they grow to be so large? The reason could be their symbiotic relationships with other smaller organisms. In the case of modern species, such symbionts are tiny golden-brown single-celled algae called diatoms. The shells of nummulites are relatively transparent, and since they're flat, there's a large surface area for the light needed for the diatoms to photosynthesize. For some reasons, scientists are still debating about them. The presence of plant symbionts in animals dwelling in the sea encourages the growth of a calcareous skeleton in hosts. So, the gigantic size of the nummulites in Egypt could be due to their close relationship with symbiotic diatoms. Does that make sense? Fun fact: a species of nummulites evolve very fast, and their fossils change from one layer of sediments to the next. So, the limestone used for the pyramids of Giza are so packed with such fossils that it's known as nummulitic limestone. This limestone also contains two kinds of nummulites, the smaller slave's lentils and the larger angel's money. But those are not different species, but rather different stages in the life cycle of a single species.
Poison dart frogs are one of the most toxic species on our planet. They come in a range of bright colors: blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. And that's not just to show off. It's a kind of message to all the predators that might want to come after them. I'm toxic, so you better stay away and don't try to eat me. The golden poison dart frog, for example, has so much poison it could finish 20,000 mice. Vibrant colors in nature are generally a sign it's better to stay away from that animal, because it's a warning you're looking at something you definitely don't want to eat. Check a blue ring octopus, another extremely venomous creature. Unlike poison dart frogs or, for example, velvet ants, whose bright colors you see right away, this octopus shows its blue rings only when it feels threatened. With over 300 pounds and 10 feet in length, Komodo dragons are the heaviest lizards on our planet. They will go after almost anything that comes their way, including pigs, deer, smaller dragons, and even more challenging creatures, like big water buffalo. They camouflage and patiently wait for their prey to come closer, lying in the grass. Saltwater crocodiles. Their attacks are more frequent than those of sharks. They have a 3.5 times stronger bite than a lion and 25 times stronger bite than people do. One more superpower: these guys can literally launch their bodies out of water, and they do that with their tails. Hippos seem quite relaxed as they chill in the water, but they're actually pretty aggressive. They attack humans even more than leopards and lions. This guy is small, but it can be as threatening as a huge hippo. Meet the tsetse fly. It lives in sub-Saharan Africa, and travelers that love spending their time outdoors or in game parks should be careful about these insects. It's important to get the right treatment as soon as possible if it bites you. Pus caterpillars look all innocent and fluffy, but you'd better avoid touching them. They're venomous, and these wig-like hairs you see are actually spines that can cause multiple issues if you touch them. Ouch! Vespa mandarinia mostly build their nests underground, so it's trickier to find them. Their sting is like someone pierced you with a hot metal pin. The stinger is long enough to even go through the standard protective beekeeper's gear. The reef stonefish is the world's most venomous fish. There are 13 stout spines in its dorsal fin, and that's how this animal injects its highly toxic venom. Lions. They live mostly in Africa and can eat a quarter of their body weight, about 88 pounds, in a single meal. They mostly hunt at night and during storms because the wind and noise make it harder for their prey to hear and see them. Why hunt if they can just go and participate in some burger eating contest? Tigers mostly inhabit Asia. They're able to survive in different conditions since you can find them in various areas, from mountains to rainforests. As long as they have enough water, food, and cover, they can adapt to anything. Food can sometimes be a problem since they eat up to 60 big animals per year, with smaller ones as snacks in between. Fun fact, their skin is covered in stripes too, not just their fur. A bit of good news here. Wolves aren't really into eating humans. Still, sometimes they do go after people. They mostly attack when they don't have enough food or when they lose their habitat. Sharks have a bad reputation, but they mostly spend their time away from humans, catching smaller fish and other marine animals. Still, they'll defend themselves if you come to their area and they feel threatened. And in that case, their serrated teeth certainly don't look too peaceful. Ostrich may not belong to that list at first sight, but when it's cornered, this animal is perfectly capable of taking down big predators such as wolves and lions. Yeah, sometimes they can be brave, and in reality, they never stick their head in the sand when frightened. We can't forget to mention brown or grizzly bears, which are considered to be way more aggressive than other bears. It's 3.5 times more likely something bad will happen if you encounter them than polar bears. They're also 21 times more dangerous than black bears. And yet, brown bears are the most widespread kind of bears across the globe. When it comes to snakes, saw-scaled viper is definitely one of those you need to be careful with the most, because the consequences of its bite are statistically quite sad to say the least. It has enough venom that even its weakest bite could finish 2 people. Not just saw-scaled viper, there are multiple snakes you need to stay away from. Meet Philippine cobra. It lurks in forested areas, dense jungles, low-lying plains, and open fields. It especially likes areas near water and can spit its venom up to 9.8 feet away. Black mamba too, very venomous, kinda nervous, and when it sees you as a threat, extremely aggressive. It's among the world's fastest snakes, since it can move at speeds of up to 12.5 miles per hour. Australian box jellyfish is the most venomous marine animal in the world. It has tentacles covered in small darts with venom, and they can grow up to 10 feet long. Seeing even a small random spider in your home can be unpleasant, and picture if it was a Goliath bird eater instead, the largest spider in the world, and also one of the creepiest. You'll mostly find them spending their time in burrows with the entrances covered with the web. Luckily, their venom is not that bad to humans. It's like a wasp stinging you. Bad news for insects, you guys should be careful. This spider is a real danger for you. Platypus looks cute and harmless, but despite their funny appearance, they're one of the most dangerous animals in Australia. They have spurs located on their hind legs, and each of them is connected to a crural gland by a duct. And this gland creates a complex mixture of hundreds of toxins. Ugh! They have 2 layers of fur for waterproofing and insulation. With their fur, platypuses trap a layer of air right next to their skin so they can remain dry when they're underwater looking for food, which is about 12 hours a day. One of the stings you'll definitely feel the most is from the bullet ant. They're small, and their stinger is only up to 0.11 inches long, but it can still leave you with several hours of burning sensation. Pufferfish are poor swimmers, so they're most likely to end up as lunch for larger fish. But when they sense danger, they ingest big amounts of water together with air, so their body inflates like a balloon. They can puff up to even 2 to 3 times their regular size. A single pufferfish has enough toxin to finish 30 humans. The African buffalo is the only species of wild cow you'll find in Africa. You can recognize it for its heavy, rigid horns, and this, in combination with its massive size and aggressive nature, makes them very dangerous for whoever stands in its way. Elephants will respect your space most of the time, but only if you respect theirs. They can feel threatened by, let's say, a group of tourists that come too close and disrupt their personal space. In that case, they'll defend themselves and be very angry, which isn't such a nice scene. Wild dogs can be pretty dangerous, like dingoes in Australia. They can either live alone or move in packs of up to 10 animals, which can be especially tricky for their prey when the entire pack is after it. They can cross great distances and communicate with each other, howling like wolves. A star-nosed mole is certainly one of the weirdest looking creatures you'll come across. In some way, it looks like someone replaced its head with a very small octopus. They're not dangerous to humans in the way some venomous creatures or large predators are, but they can cause a lot of damage in your garden.
Let's go with the widely accepted theory that a massive asteroid hitting our planet wiped out the dinosaurs. It does make you wonder why mammals made it though. One idea is that mammals were better prepared. Back then, they weren't the most popular creatures on Earth, but they were pretty diverse. They bred themselves into a huge range of species, and it might have saved them. Some said mammals survived because they were smaller, so they needed fewer resources. As they had to constantly hide from dinosaurs, they managed to survive in difficult environments, way before the hit. But let's say the asteroid never came, and it never damaged the environment the dinosaurs thrived in. it's safe to say our fauna would look different today. Take the mighty Titanosaur. It's considered the biggest land animal to ever exist, some reaching lengths of about 7 standard cars lined up. It had a neck so long that it would have needed a 2-story home just to fit. It also had a plant-based diet, so it ate from the ground, but from very tall trees too. There was nothing much left to eat for, say, the little Jeremiah, a mammal that lived roughly at the same time, but was as small as a popsicle stick. Let's take this thought experiment a bit further and imagine we have a time machine that could transport today's mammals to the time of the dinosaurs. Some scientists say they have gotten bigger, so there's a chance they could survive, right? They're also much more evolved in terms of their diets and skills. Others say definitely not. They couldn't survive, mostly because they're too small to compete with dinosaurs. An adult T-Rex was just about the size of a bus. It probably wouldn't waste its time trying to capture food that's human-sized, for instance. They'd probably be on the lookout for prey the size of a car, or even bigger, like an elephant. And it most likely wouldn't take them long to win the fight. Sure, a T-Rex might munch on something smaller too, but only if it's really hungry and has no other alternative. If we had no choice but to send some mammals back in hopes they could survive, what would be our best bet? Some say the chimpanzee could be a good candidate, as these primates build their sleeping nests higher up in trees. This might have kept them safe from the carnivore dinosaurs living on land. There's no real evidence of dinosaurs being able to fly, but we do know there might have been some reptiles that took to the sky for transportation, like pterosaurs, the flying lizard. These ones like to eat fish and smaller animals, but who's to say they wouldn't pick up a chimpanzee given the opportunity? Another good candidate might be the hyena. Today, the spotted hyena is the most common big carnivore in Africa, and it's highly adaptable. They could snatch up all sorts of prey by themselves or even in larger units. They can digest most parts of their prey, including the skin and bones. These animals aren't picky eaters, and they wouldn't mind chewing on parts that other creatures would gladly skip on. Not to mention, they'll eat fruits too, if needed. Hyenas are overall healthy and sturdy animals, with some studies showing they hardly ever get health problems. But like any other animal on this planet, the hyenas also have their weaknesses. We still don't know why these creatures can't be found in Europe anymore. But some research suggests they found it hard to coexist with humans and wolves. Also, they're not very adapted to living in forests. Orcas might have been able to rub elbows with the dinosaurs too. These creatures also don't have any natural predators, which earned them the nickname the wolves of the sea. That's because they go out looking for prey the same way wolves do, in groups. Orcas may be related to dolphins, but we can hardly call them friendly, as there have been cases of them sinking ships on purpose. They're highly intelligent animals that spend time together and are very organized. They also do this thing where they often take down more prey than they're prepared to eat. It may be because they see this experience as training. Other theories suggest orcas are so intelligent that they look for food in advance, even though they're not hungry yet. It might also be because whenever they want something to munch on, they're looking for the best quality food there is. The reason why they might not survive in the dinosaur era, though, is the global temperature. Back in the Mesozoic era, our planet was seriously hotter, several degrees warmer than it is today. Orcas prefer living in colder waters, but you'll find them in all oceans and most seas. Ostriches are the no-brainer answer. Look at them. They're practically dinosaurs. They even have a long-lost dino cousin that lived in the Cretaceous era, called the Struthiomimus. Its name translates to ostrich-like because of its similar powerful and speedy legs, agility, and even feathers. On the downside, they might not be able to take down larger dinosaurs. The vegetation back in the Mesozoic era would have been different too. conifers used to dominate land, and ostriches are known to be pretty picky eaters, so they might have had a difficult time finding food back then. There are plenty of reasons to send felines through that time machine too. In the Jurassic period, for example, there were plenty of slow-moving prey to eat and tons of hiding spots in the thick bushes. Felines are sneaky animals, have precise vision, and are extremely good at climbing. Some pack a punch for their size, making them fierce fighters. Lions are good contenders because of their speed and teamwork. They might be able to take down some decent-sized dinosaurs, like the Europasaurus, when working together. Leopards are really good at climbing trees, so they could snatch prey and enjoy it above the ground, where they might be safe from bigger predators. What might be their downfall is, again, the temperature difference. It was considerably hotter back then. Today's large mammals aren't equipped to deal with that extreme heat. Lions might be the kings of the savannah now, but it would be too hot even for them. If they ever want to grab a spiky-tailed herbivore for lunch, like the Tugiangosaurus or Stegosaurus, they might be in for a surprise. One hit from their extremely powerful tail could cause some serious damage. Not to mention run-ins with raptors, like the frightening Sauropod. The single most likely animal that might survive being roommates with the dinosaurs is the platypus. This quirky Aussie creature is one of those rare egg-laying mammals. It's a fan of freshwater and as close to a living relic as an animal can be. Scientists were able to trace its origin back as far as 120 million years ago. For food, it wields its sensitive beak to catch shrimp and worms underwater. When it dives, skin flaps cover its eyes and ears, so it becomes blind and deaf. But it still uses that beak like a high-tech radar. A grown platypus can even feast on half its body weight in a single night. Scientists have known for a while it shares many traits with reptiles, like its shoulder bones or the fact that it lays eggs. Other creatures that coexisted with the dinosaurs still exist today, just not mammals. Snakes made their way into our fauna in those prehistoric times too, as well as cockroaches and bees. Some species of sharks are even considered to predate the dinosaurs. And if we look at our entire planetary history, we'll see they survived 4 out of 5 periods of mass extinction. Horseshoe crabs have the nickname living fossils because their evolution was much slower than any other animal that we know of. Not because they're not smart, but simply because they found their perfect form much sooner. So they didn't need to make a lot of changes. They have a very rudimentary immune system, but it seems to work wonders. No wonder they stayed pretty much the same for over 400 million years.
When we say extinction, we usually think of dinosaurs that went to lunch with a humongous asteroid and were wiped out from the face of the Earth. We don't think of ourselves possibly going away in the near future. But what we forget is that there have been 5 mass extinctions that our planet witnessed in the last 500 million years, not just one. And we can be nearing the 6th one, where one of the species to possibly disappear are humans. The first great mass extinction came about 440 million years ago in the Ordovician period. Back then, life was mostly thriving in the oceans and along the coastlines. Biodiversity was great at the time. There were thousands of different species, trilobites, sea scorpions, and all kinds of weird-looking mollusks, and even fish. You name it, Ordovician had it. But then, the temperature around the planet started to drop. The overall warm climatic zones became colder and colder, until the oceans got covered with thick sheets of ice. Most of the marine species weren't ready for such abrupt changes. Imagine a trilobite serenely crawling along the bottom of the sea and suddenly bumping into a glacier. Yeah, it's like living your entire life in a beach bungalow, only to find yourself in an igloo one day. The event was dubbed Late Ordovician Glaciation, which led to Late Ordovician mass extinction. Over 60% of all species that lived in that period disappeared. Only ancient fossils were left for paleontologists to discover hundreds of millions of years later. Nobody still knows exactly what caused the temperature drop at the time. The main theory is that the CO2 levels in the atmosphere fell sharply. It led to cooling down the entire surface of Earth. But the reasons for such a collapse are still under debate. However, that wasn't the worst mass extinction event in the history of our planet. Despite more than half of all living creatures being wiped out, biodiversity on Earth restored itself in the following 5 million years. Life went on until another catastrophe struck. Within the span of 20 to 25 million years, from about 375 to 350 million years ago, several extinction events occurred. They were like pulses that damaged a lot of marine species. Arthropods, like scorpions and mites, lots of various fish, including sharks, all were in decline. Overall, more than 75% of all living beings disappeared back then, who were mainly in the oceans. The reasons for such events are even more unclear than those before the late Ordovician mass extinction. Most scientists now believe those waves were caused by changes in the sea level and a lack of oxygen in the oceans. A lot of plants quickly moved to land and adapted to living outside of water. And since they were the main source of oxygen in the ocean, all those fish and sea scorpions were in for a very unpleasant surprise. The booming growth of plants on land also removed much of the CO2 in the atmosphere and enriched it with oxygen instead. This led to an abrupt temperature fall again. And although no new ice age followed, many land animals couldn't adapt to the new conditions. The bitter irony was that the major part of them had just recently crawled out on land from the ocean, looking for a better environment. Ah, well. This was only the first wave, though. The reasons for the second one, that came about several million years later, are still unknown. Scientists think there could have been mass volcanic eruptions, or even meteor strikes, but those are just hypotheses. Then another 100 million years passed without much trouble. Species rose and fell, evolved and disappeared, but the cycle of life continued, until about 250 million years ago, when the third mass extinction event occurred. It happened in the Permian period, the last period of the Paleozoic era, and it was so catastrophic that it had all the chances of becoming the last mass extinction on our planet. Scientists are still unsure what caused so many species to be eliminated. But the fact is that around 96% of all living creatures in the world were gone. One theory suggests that volcanoes started being overly active. They threw millions of tons of methane and basalt into the atmosphere. Asteroid strikes might have added to the damage too. The sky was literally covered in dark clouds of ash. The proto-mammals and reptiles tried to hide from the black and gray mist, but it was everywhere. It was like hiding from the air itself. Another culprit could have been microbes that loved their methane-rich environments. They could have quickly spread in the oceans and literally choked the rest of the marine life forms there. But whatever the reason, the Permian mass extinction event was the most massive and destructive of all the Great Five. All life on our planet could have ended right then and there. But those 4% that persisted eventually spread across the Earth and started a new era. Yay! This time, they lived a peaceful life for only 50 million years. And then, whammo! The fourth great mass extinction hit. It was different though, slowly creeping across the planet over the last 18 million years of the Triassic period. The extinction occurred in numerous short pulses, wiping out several species at a time. A slight climate change here, an abrupt temperature fall there, and very upset animals and fish all around. The main reason for that was again the volcanic activity at the time. Fiery mountains started spewing out ash and gas once more, lowering the oxygen levels and suffocating life. Well, that was harsh. The gases and other substances thrown out of the volcanoes' mouths changed the Earth's climate again. Sea levels rose because of that, and some researchers believe even the pH levels were altered. That means the marine life that used to be swimming peacefully in more alkaline waters suddenly found itself trying to survive in acid. But apart from causing bursts of extinction, these changes also ushered in the era of dinosaurs. It didn't begin immediately, of course. Some species evolved and slowly grew into the mighty animals we've heard so much about. Their extinction was the last of the Great Five, and certainly the most well-known. About 65 million years ago, when dinos were still ruling both land and ocean, an enormous asteroid came from outer space and fell right on Earth. The impact was so powerful, it left a huge crater in the Yucatan Peninsula, and the explosion sent billions of tons of debris into the air. The dinosaurs that lived far away from the impact zone raised their heads and saw black and churning clouds blocking the sun. It remained for years, drastically dropping the temperatures. In addition to the cold that followed, the asteroid hit a carbonate rock that had a lot of flammable material in it. The impact led to an explosion. The chemicals mixed in the air and produced sulfuric acid, and that acid fell down in the form of rains, altering the pH of the oceans. Aquatic creatures that were again used to more alkaline waters went, "Oh, come on!" That didn't help, though. The changes were abrupt and severe. About 75% of all animals and plants went extinct in a matter of years, unable to survive the new, harsh conditions on the planet. But some persisted. Many of them were reptiles, like crocodiles and turtles, which managed to survive even up to this day, looking almost the same as they did back in the dinosaurs' days. Others were mammals, which had lived in the shadow of the mighty dinos and hid from them in dark corners. But now that the giant animals were gone, they began to flourish, bringing in the Cenozoic era, the one that lasts to this day. And today, we might be witnessing the sixth great mass extinction. According to scientists, with the evolution of humans, a lot of different plants and animals have gone from the face of our planet, never to return. The good thing is, mass extinctions have always happened over a span of several million years, so we might still have time to